Hello, everybody. And well, this is going to be a surprise live stream because this isn't actually going to be us reviewing the Dawkins and Hirsi Ali debate. It is actually the long awaited mask reveal for Apostate Aladdin. Apostate Aladdin, everyone.
No, that's not happening because the wire transfer didn't go through, so
Mm,
that's no, not today. Next time
damn.
maybe.
Sorry,
But thanks
everyone.
for inviting me anyway. Since I'm here, I'll just stick around.
I was hoping the peer pressure of being on the spot would make him actually want to do it. But
No.
alas, all of us are going to have to wait a little bit longer.
Yep.
Too
No, I'm
bad.
I'm just here today chilling. I haven't prepared anything. This is your stream. I'm just here to assist. So, yeah, take it away.
All right. And thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I figured this would be an interesting thing to cover just because there's a lot of overlap in the things we talk about. And for anyone who doesn't know, oh, and we're joined by another
Yeah,
guest
the
over
real
here.
mastermind behind the stream right here.
Is that a poo?
Yes, that is a poo.
Okay, it was a 50-50 guess. I still can't tell
Yeah,
them apart, to be honest.
good job.
Uh, eh, Both beautiful cats. But yeah, so what I wanted to do was talk about this because I've been covering Ayan Hirsi Ali and Richard Dawkins recently on my channel for different reasons, but they are related. So those videos are in the description below if you want to check it out afterwards. So the first video I did was to just discuss what surprised many people, and that was Ayan Hirsi Ali's conversion, sorta conversion to Christianity, some kind of form of Christianity anyway. And for anyone who doesn't want to watch it, basically I criticized her because it didn't seem like her reasons for believing Christianity were rooted in it being true, but more in terms of it giving her some comfort and for believing that it would be the ideological tool to fight Islam. And what I pointed out in the video, and which we might cover in as we watch Dawkins and Hirsi Ali debate, is that there are a lot of similar harms between Christianity and Islam, in my opinion. So I thought that was also really odd. And to just talk about Dawkins, so I covered his recent interview during I think it was Ramadan, the beginning of Ramadan, where he talked about how Christianity is fundamentally decent, which I also thought was surprising considering his reputation as, this big new atheist, but also because of all the things he said criticizing Christianity. And so that's the context and what the focus of the debate is going to be. So we both haven't watched it, but our understanding is that it's covering two main things: why Hirsi Ali converts Christianity, and the role of atheism in the world today, specifically in dealing with the rising threat of Islamism, as they put it. So, yeah, I was wondering if you could tell me, Aladdin, what your thoughts are of these two individuals before we get started.
To be completely honest with you, I don't really care for them. Not that I think that their work is not important or their opinions are bad. I just don't actually read their stuff very often. So I don't have any strong opinions on them. The only thing that I read recently was Ayan's article, essay, or whatever you want to call it, where she talked about why she converted to Christianity because I was very curious. I don't take it as a loss for our team or atheists or ex-Muslims or whatever if she converted to a religion. I was just really curious to know why, because that is sort of one of the main questions that I was asking as I was leaving Islam was, what would get someone to convert to Islam? What would convince someone of Islam? So similarly, I'm curious, what would convince someone who's unconvinced of Islam of Christianity? And that essay was a bit disappointing to me because I couldn't really find anything substantial in it except that, as you said, politics, that Islam is a force that needs to be dealt with, and Christianity is the only force that can equal it or rival it somehow. And I don't have any strong opinions on that. I just don't. That doesn't satisfy my curiosity about why someone would believe in something. So it sounds to me like she doesn't actually believe in Christianity. I don't know if she believes that Jesus rose, from his death and was crucified and all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to hear what she will say in today's
Yeah,
video.
yeah. I'm curious if Dawkins will actually ask her those kinds of direct questions. side tangent, but there was a recent podcast, Jordan Peterson and Cosmic Skeptic, where if any of you don't know who Cosmic Skeptic is, he's a prominent atheist YouTuber, and he came on to Jordan Peterson's podcast and directly tried to ask him, "Do you think the resurrection actually happened? Like, if you had a camera there, a camera was recording, would Jesus emerge out of the tomb?" And couldn't get a straight answer. So I'm curious to see if those kinds of important questions are going to be asked of Hirsi Ali in this debate. And yeah, so what are your thoughts on Dawkins then?
Um, I only know like secondhand opinions of him, like what people say about him. So I don't really have an opinion on Dawkins. I haven't been keeping up with him because from my beginning of my journey out of Islam, so to speak, I came across some of his videos. What were they called? The Three Horsemen, were they?
Four
Four
horsemen.
Horsemen, yeah. Him and I always confuse horsemen and musketeers. I think of the Three Musketeers, but yeah, the Four Horsemen of Atheism. I came across some of their debates and the, hitch slap moments and all that kind of stuff. And it didn't appeal to me as a believer because my questioning wasn't necessarily with the existence of God, and I assert that there is no God. It was just trying to figure out how Islam, doesn't make sense to me, and there's a lot of contradictions in that. So I was never really interested in atheism itself. I don't know. I call myself an atheist in the sense that I don't have a belief in theism, but I don't make the assertion that there is no God. I think it's almost pointless to make that assertion, in my opinion. So I haven't kept up with Dawkins. I don't really know that much about him.
Okay, yeah. I mean, for me personally, I didn't really know of any of these people, the Four Horsemen, before I left Islam. I think I might have been kind of aware of Christopher Hitchens kind of when I was starting to question Islam and started, like you, watching videos on YouTube. But I think after I left, seeing particularly the bravery of Ayaan Hirsi Ali in speaking against Islam as a woman, where, as we both know, when you're a former Muslim woman criticizing Islam, you get a different brand of toxic treatment than the male
Mhm.
ex-Muslims do, which is a whole other subject why that's the case. Um, but yeah, so I was really impressed and just so overwhelmed honestly by her bravery, especially when I found out that she wrote the screenplay of this movie criticizing Islam, and the director of the movie was murdered, and this happened in the Netherlands, so in Europe, and uh, she kept on pressing anyway with what she believed to be the most important thing to talk about, which is criticizing Islam. So I always admired that. And for Dawkins as well, I read The God Delusion, his pretty famous book, a long time ago, again, soon after I left Islam. And I could see that he didn't know Islam very well. And maybe you could argue that he doesn't understand Christianity, or maybe the roots of why people believe, as well as someone who's educated in the topic. But I learned a lot from his kinds of arguments, the things he would point out in terms of fallacies that a lot of believers commonly make. So it was influential for me in that sense. And I think the thing that was really an important takeaway for me is it wasn't that big of a deal when Hirsi Ali left atheism, converted, because in the end she's one person, and that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. We'll probably get into it a little bit more as we watch the debate. Is I think this whole notion of the new atheist movement that arose and that has now failed or faded or whatever, I think is really overblown. I mean, atheism is something that's existed for a long, long time. I think you can see that the number of atheists have been rising for centuries, probably since you know the spread of mass printing of books and the dissemination of information, the industrial revolution, the internet. So I think all of these things have way predates the new atheists. I think they were like a moment in time, and probably there's a lot of media buzz around it, but uh, atheism doesn't live and die by these individuals. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wasn't even that aware of the new atheism movement, and that's not to discredit their work, but I'm saying from my perspective as someone who was questioning Islam, it didn't play that much of a direct role in my journey. So I suspect that either way, I was going to arrive at the same conclusions in a similar time frame. But who knows? Maybe it has some ripple effects. If they didn't do the work that they do, maybe other people wouldn't be talking about it. But the point is that it's bigger than just a few people, and I don't really care for the statements that it's it's a specific movement that is dying away. From my perspective, the movement that I'm a part of is growing every day. So and there's no one movement. Like the movement that I'm a part of is not about atheism. Maybe they have a movement that it is about specifically leaving religion behind or not believing in God, but that's not the thing that I perceive myself to be a part of. But either way, I'm just curious to see these two people talk about this topic, and I want to know how direct they will be in asking and answering questions. So yeah, neither of us has watched the video,
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
should make it interesting.
Yeah, and the thing to note that they're old friends. So long before this whole thing happened, they probably had a lot of conversations about this subject of her conversion. And so yeah, before we get started, I just want to encourage everyone to like this video and to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There is a poll question in the live chat. Have the new atheists done more harm than good in the world? You can vote in that anytime you'd like. And yeah, all right, let's get going. We might have time for questions at the very end, depending on how fast this goes and how much we have to say. So if you do have any questions, I'll save them for the end. So feel free to leave those in the live chat as well. All right, with that out of the way, let's pull this up. Add to the stage.
And we'll be playing the video at 1.25 speed, I think.
Yeah. Once we get going, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started.
More fitting.
Oh wait, can't hear that.
I can.
Okay.
End to these incredible 2 days than to bring together these two people, both of whom I, and I think many of us here, admire greatly, and who have a real, very significant topic to discuss. It's hard to think of a more significant one, in fact. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, for those people who are not familiar, has had an extraordinary life story. She was born and raised in Somalia, at which point she was an enthusiastic member of the Muslim Brotherhood. She then escaped and became a refugee into the Netherlands, where she rose to become a top-ranking politician and a best-selling author. Her book, Infidel, has sold many, many millions of copies over the decades. And during that time and in the years since, she became synonymous with the New Atheism movement. She renounced her Islamic past. And if you actually look up New Atheism, there are the four horsemen, as they are known, and then straight after that is Ayaan Hirsi Ali. So she has been absolutely integral to that movement. Last autumn, some months ago, on Unheard, in fact, she announced that she had become a Christian. And the world reacted. It was covered in all of the newspapers, and it was seen rightly as an incredibly significant story in the world of ideas. Richard Dawkins, who needs no further introduction, but I must, is perhaps the most famous atheist in the world. His books, The God Delusion, The Selfish Gene, are some of the biggest-selling non-fiction books of all time. He has been active, making the argument for the atheistic cause for decades. And when his close friend and fellow new atheist announced that she had become a Christian, he wrote an open letter to her saying, and I quote, "Seriously, Ayaan, you, a Christian, you are no more a Christian than I am." We're bringing them together for the first time to have that out and have that conversation. So please, to begin with, welcome to the stage, Richard Dawkins.
I just want to say I love the contrast of that upbeat, hip, youthful music with Richard Dawkins just trotting up the stage.
I was hesitant to comment on it. This man is aged, he's been around for a while.
Yeah, he's seen some things.
And just behind that curtain, I hope, is none other than Ayaan. Welcome, Ayaan Hirsi Ali.
Are they going to use the same song?
Same song.
There's something kind of funny about that.
That is kind of disappointing. You almost wish it was like the WWE where they each have their own
A
intro
theme
song.
song.
Yeah, theme
Yeah.
song. Yeah.
Maybe something Christian.
Oh, true. Like choral music.
Hmm. Was that for Ayan or Richard?
Great to see you, Ayan. Welcome.
Thank you.
I think we have to start with the extraordinary few months you've just had. For those people who haven't been following it, just tell us the story how such a famous atheist, someone who had rejected religion, came to call herself a Christian.
Oh. So I want to say that I didn't, like many people who come to faith, I didn't see big banging lights, and I didn't have any of those spectacular experiences that some people share. I wish I did, but I didn't. I had a personal crisis. I lived for about a decade with intense depression and anxiety, self-loathing. I hit rock bottom. I went to a place where I actually didn't want to live anymore, but wasn't brave enough to take my own life. And so I was self-medicating. I had, over a long period of time, seen psychiatrists, other doctors. I was trying to understand my condition and trying to treat it with the help of pure evidence-based science. And in January, February of last year, I saw one therapist who said, perhaps it's something else that you have, and she described it as spiritual bankruptcy. And that resonated with me, and having reached a place where I had absolutely nothing to lose, I prayed, and I prayed desperately. And for me, that was a turning point. And what happened after that is a miracle in its own right. I feel connected to something higher and greater than myself. I feel my zest for life is back. And that.
Thoughts so far?
Several. Well, first of all, I'm happy that her zest for life is back. I'm happy for her. Yeah, I'll let you share some before I share mine.
Well, it's interesting to me that she said that she wished that she had some kind of spiritual mystical experience, because I guess that is one of the reasons why a lot of people believe like they feel the presence of the Holy Spirit, if they're Christians, or they feel like something interceded in their lives, saved them. And I actually kind of appreciate the honesty that she didn't say she had anything like that. And the other thing I wanted to just say was it's interesting that she had that depression without religion. I remember having that depression when I was Muslim, and I realized, oh, Islam is not giving me the answers for this thing. So it's interesting to me that it's reversed for her, that she found the answers to depression with religion.
Yeah, I was thinking of the same thing. But I was even hesitant to say that, because if you were to say that you were depressed and then you left Islam, often you might hear that, oh, so you left Islam because you were depressed, or perhaps that depression was a sign of you losing your connection with God or something like that. You would never get credibility or support or cheer for your state of mind, your distress causing you to make a decision that takes you further away from religion. But the other way around, it is admirable, when someone is at a
Celebrated.
yeah, it's Jesus saved her, or Allah saved her, or whatever. And I found it interesting that she said when she had nothing to lose, and that on its own is not an indication that her new belief is incorrect just because she found it during desperation. But I wish, if something were true, I feel like it would be true whether you're desperate or not. It wouldn't just be true when you're desperate and you have no other avenue.
That's such a great point, because you would think that in those moments of desperation and hopelessness that maybe you should actually be more vigilant in what you believe or don't believe, or what you follow or not follow, because you're more vulnerable and susceptible at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would be more questioning of, is this wishful thinking? Is it because I want this to work? If she had prayed to another god, or did she actually specifically pray to Jesus? By the way, she didn't mention that part.
Well, she might get to that in a second. Eloise said, "So Christianity is true. I see no correlation." Yeah,
I don't
she
either.
might get to that in a second. And Michael says she perhaps needed community. That's
That
definitely
might
what
be
it
part of it.
partially sounds like. As you said, Christianity comes with a built-in community, so that's a big part of the appeal. All right, let's let her continue. Okay. Mm-mm.
Were you removing the video, by the way, every time?
No, hold on. I'm trying to find it. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Yeah.
And that experience has filled me with humility, I have to say. And it is something that's very subjective. It's extremely difficult to explain. I'm trying to work, get into the details, the granular details of how I got there in a book, but that is a short, that's the shortest story that I can tell.
Let's go to Richard Dawkins' reaction, because
that's a movie.
Still no mention of Christianity, by the way.
Yeah, and I want to say something before we continue.
Okay.
I noticed how she said she was going to a doctor who was treating her with pure evidence-based science, and I find that interesting that she's kind of casting doubt on science and evidence, and I'm wondering, what does the impure evidence-based science look like? What kind of doctor would also treat you with a dash of not evidence-based stuff? Is she talking about a spiritual healing? Like, is that what she's alluding to? That she needed to talk to a priest or something instead of a doctor?
Unclear, because the other thing she said earlier was that the therapist suggested that she might be spiritually bankrupt, which is an interesting avenue for a therapist to lead someone into.
Yeah, I can't remember if she said therapist specifically, but I don't know what medical professional would say that you're spiritually. I don't know where spirituality is defined in the DSM manual. I don't know.
No,
That was struck
neither.
me as weird.
Yeah, Daniel in the comments and the live chat makes a great point. That might be possibly true, that Ayan was probably so accustomed to believing in a higher power after being Muslim so long. So maybe she wanted that feeling back without Islam, and Christianity seemed like the perfect way to have her cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, let's keep going.
Personal story, but to call yourself a Christian is a bit different. I mean, a Christian has to believe in something. And I mean, you go to church now, and you listen to the vicar, and you kind of notice what a lot of nonsense he talks. I mean, do you really take it seriously that Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus rose from the dead, Jesus was born of a virgin, and that's part of Christianity?
So I think because you, and I know you very well, we've been friends for a long time, and in fact, in some ways, I think of you as a mentor. I would say you're coming at this from a place of there is nothing. And what has happened to me is I think I have accepted there is something. And when you accept that
so
there is
vague.
something, there is a powerful
So vague.
entity. For me, the God that turned me around, I think what the vicar is saying no longer sounds nonsensical. It makes a great deal of sense. And not only does it make a great deal of sense, it's also layered with the wisdom of millennia. And so, like you, I did mock faith in general, and probably Christianity in particular, but I don't do that anymore. And again, that is where the humility comes into it, is it doesn't seem, in 2024, after I went through that experience, it doesn't seem nonsensical to me, and I don't mock it. I think I've come down to my knees to say, perhaps those people who've always had faith have something that we who lost faith don't have. And people who have faith also, like the woman who told me, well, you've tried everything and you've lost hope, you've lost faith. Try it, pray. I think just in that one word, there is so much wisdom, and that it's, I am stuttering and I'm staggering to say, I'm just trying to say, no, it's not.
This is like a really rambling answer to what was his question originally? I think he asked some pretty straightforward
Why
questions.
Christianity?
Why
Or like
Christianity? Do
how-
you actually
yeah.
believe Jesus is the Son of God?
And she latched on to the last part of it, which is that these I don't know if he said priests or whoever giving sermons, that
Vicar,
they sound
yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah, vicars, they sound ridiculous, and that's the part that she's been answering. But she said nothing about why Christianity specifically.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I find that I can relate to, in the sense that I've heard this kind of stuff before, is you've probably encountered them too. Like, so I know people in my personal life, and I've encountered people just doing this channel, who they're not aligned with Christianity specifically, but they have this belief in a God, and they
In
believe that
something, not nothing.
in
That's important.
something that is loving and benevolent in the universe, that we're all part of, and that makes them feel better. And I understand how that can be a really comforting idea. But to Dawkins' point, which she didn't answer at all, I mean, she might answer as she continues to ramble. When you're Christian, you have to believe in certain things. Like, there have to actually be core beliefs that Jesus is the Son of God, that Jesus was resurrected, that we need to accept Jesus to be saved, and so on and so forth. And so I think that's where the gap is. It almost makes me feel like, when you're watching something on Netflix, and you no longer are interested in this movie, and instead of really looking and scrolling, you just, I'll just go to this next thing because it seems familiar and it's right there next to it.
I mean, there's so much that she said that is noteworthy. That for example, the statement "there is nothing," that is almost a loaded statement. There's nothing, there's something. So it sounds to someone listening that something is better than nothing. Like, why would you believe in nothing when in reality, maybe from Dawkins' point of view, there is nothing in the sense that there is no God with those attributes. But it doesn't mean that the universe is nothing. There's more mystery to it. There's still something there. It's just not the something that you anticipate. So from a theistic point of view, it's nothing, but it's not actually nothing. And then she said the wisdom of millennia.
Oh,
Since
yeah.
when does relying on what people believed for a long time?
Well,
I mean,
what fallacies that appeal to tradition, I think.
Tradition or popularity, in a
Yeah.
sense. Like I don't want to bring up the specific hurtful topic, but she's a victim of something that a lot of people practice and have practiced for a long, long time. Just because it's been around for millennia doesn't mean that it is wise or that it's been refined necessarily, or that it is true. It could be refined, but it's not true.
I think it's like a really human thing to be swayed by that sort of argument. They're like, well, this thing's been around for so long. So many people are happy or visibly happy with it. You almost have this instinct of, well, there must be something there. Except here's the big thing: you can say exactly the same thing about Islam, Islam that she continues to criticize. So I
And
have
she
more to
also,
say, but maybe we should let
yeah.
her continue.
Okay.
I interrupted her mid ramble.
All right.
Apologize. I apologize, Ayan.
Stupid. It's
Okay.
in fact, it's clever and it's wise.
So you believe in some kind of higher power, which is comforting you, and you're obviously reacting from an Islamic past, and I know that from what you've written, that part of what you feel is Christianity is a bulwark against Islam, which is a quite separate thing from what you've been now saying. But you stand by that. I mean, that's part of what you're saying, and I accept that, and I support that. That's why I've called you a political Christian. But from what you've just said, it sounds as though you're more than just a political Christian. I mean, it sounds as though you actually believe it.
So what is your response to those specific questions of Richard? When the vicar is saying that Jesus is the Son of God,
Good question,
literally,
host.
not figuratively,
Yeah.
how do you square that with your highly trained rational mind?
Well, it is, again, different planes of perception. So
The school of
I
Jordan
choose to
Peterson.
accept Jesus
Get out of
Christ,
here.
the
It's a
teaching of
metaphysical
Jesus Christ,
matter.
the story of Jesus Christ. I choose to accept that. So on the personal level, the rewards I get, very subjective again, but mine and through choice, which is separate from where I think that, aside from my personal experience, the history of Western civilization is mainly Christian, and that the
Wait,
external...
what?
Whoa, wait.
Wait.
How did we
How
get
did we
to
get
this
from there to
suddenly?
there? So she is saying it benefits me personally, but aside from my subjective experience, let's talk about history. I'm very confused, and like the host pointed out, or was it Richard? This is very different from what she said in the article of, Islam needs someone to stop it, so we got Christianity, and now she's talking about spirituality, which is not as present in the article, if I remember correctly.
Not as much, but I think the motivations are similar, because she does go into the challenges facing Western civilization, Islamism, China and Russia, and a few other things, and woke populism, I think she also mentioned.
Right. Which is very, very different than, like, she didn't mention any of that yet. She'll get into it now. But it's I just wanted to point out this. It seems like it serves her well to believe. That's why she believes, and she's not hiding it.
Yeah, it's almost admirable in how naive it is. If it wasn't for the fact that there's a lot of people that really believe the things that this religion teaches, and that actually causes a lot of harm. So that's why I always feel so skeptical about people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali or whoever it is talking about their version of Christianity. I got to mention Jordan Peterson as well, because they have these little beliefs that comfort them, and I would say they're probably mostly benign if you learn more about what they actually believe, but they're out there promoting Christianity, essentially.
It's
They're
like a
attracting
gateway
Christians.
Christianity. It's yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, when we come down to it, what are those harms? I mean, just to mention one example is the fear of hell that is imprinted and indoctrinated into children from a very young age, where they actually believe that hell is a real place. So, I mean, I can mention a lot more, but this is the thing that kind of seems to escape people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali when they praise Christianity.
And remember that the question was initially about, like, do you believe
She still
in
hasn't
the
answered it,
resurrection?
by the way. She said it's a
No.
different plane of perception, which sounds like something right from the school of Jordan Peterson there.
Yeah. I think what she's alluding to is that his teachings are beneficial, so I don't need to actually believe that it actually happened. The teachings are good enough. Maybe that's kind of how I understood it. Like, there's the plane of perception of it actually literally happened, and the other plane, which is it's useful to believe that it happened, or there's a lesson behind it. And
there's a metaphorical universal truth to it, even if maybe literally a guy Jesus didn't, get crucified, so on and so forth.
I think if she said it explicitly, a lot of Christians would say, you're not a Christian then. If you don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead, then you're not a Christian. So,
well, let's see if they keep pressing
continue.
her. Yeah.
For instance, the spread of Islam non-violently or violently.
Put it up on the screen.
And the challenge of Islam to Western civilization can be countered and should be countered with the message of Western civilization, which is essentially Christian. And in that sense, I think there are more people who agree with me, but that is on the societal level. And then on the civilizational level, I think that every moral, you've used yourself, Richard, the phrase lately that there is moral Christianity and there is cultural Christianity. And when moral and cultural Christianity collides with moral and cultural Islam, or moral and cultural Confucianism, or cultural authoritarianism, I think that perhaps we're on the same page about that might be a way of countering it.
Yes.
But on the personal level...
Again, the question was, do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God?
What do you mean by Son of God?
Yeah. What do you mean by be? What do you mean by is? Yeah.
Yeah, how Islam comes into an answer for a question about do you believe in Jesus is wild, because Islam came after Christianity. So, do you believe in Christianity? Well, Islam is bad, so yes. How does that make sense?
Yes, I choose to believe in God. And I think there we might say, let's agree to disagree.
Beautiful cop out there.
I didn't hear that.
She's saying, let's agree to disagree on the details. I mean,
it's more than just details. I mean,
I choose to believe. That's interesting.
I want to say two different things. Let's take the moral thing first. Islam is a nasty religion. I think we agree about that. But Christianity is not all that nice either. And when you think about Christianity, Christianity is obsessed with sin. St. Augustine said that we all inherit the sin of Adam. Well, of course he didn't exist, but so we inherit original sin. Original sin came down in the semen. Jesus was not conceived with semen, that's why he's clear of sin. His mother Mary had to be clear of sin as well, so she had to have an immaculate conception. This is all obvious nonsense. This is all theological bullshit. And the idea that humanity is born in sin and has to be cured of sin by Jesus being crucified, Jesus being punished for all our sins, that is a morally very unpleasant idea. I'm sure you must agree about that.
I find that Christianity is actually obsessed with love, and that the figure, the teachings of
Applause.
the teaching of Christ, as I see it, and again, I'm a brand new Christian, but what I'm finding out, which is the opposite of growing up as a Muslim, the message of Islam, but the message of Christianity I get is that it's a message of love, it's a message of redemption, and it's a story of renewal and rebirth. And so Jesus dying and rising again, for me, symbolizes that story. And in a small way, I felt like I had died and I was reborn. And that story of redemption and rebirth, I think makes Christianity actually a very, very powerful story for the human condition and human existence, and the pain of suffering, but also our internal, the recognition of what you call sin.
Okay, she's finally addressing.
That both good and evil are there, but that both good and evil are in us. I think those teachings in Christianity are far more powerful and have led to
the utility,
the flourishing of Western civilization.
Again, the utility.
Oh my God! And she's just about to compare
comparison
to Islam
again. So he said Islam is a nasty religion. We can agree on that. And then, and she was mentioning that Christianity's love, which is the opposite of what she grew up with in Islam. Who's talking about Islam right now? Like, even just engaging with her and agreeing with her that Islam is a nasty religion, that's sidetracking the point. Islam doesn't exist in this debate. It shouldn't. Let's assume Christianity is in a vacuum and Islam is not a part of it. So unless she wants to say that her entire belief is based on we need someone to fight Islam, then that's a different story. But you can't mix it with all this theological nonsense about sin and love and all that stuff.
Well, to me, it kind of should. I'm agreeing with you. I think it should come next. So first, let's talk about why I believe Christianity, how I know it's true, and then now I have this foundation of belief. I can see how it can address the issues in the world. And it seems like with her, it's all very muddled. I mean, it's almost like she can't help herself in just weaving Islam in. And by the way, she's doing a politician thing. Like up here in Canada, there's a right-wing conservative politician, Pierre Poilievre, and he does this exact same thing I've been noticing lately with the upcoming election, where ask the question and then you just don't answer it and just frame it as something else completely that is your talking point over and over again. And this is exactly what she's doing.
And I fear that Richard, he said something like, that is bullshit. And as funny as
theological
that is,
bullshit.
Theological bullshit. I worry that from the perspective of someone who, for example, would be offended by cuss words, right? This is a civil debate, and he pulled out a cuss word just to sound cool. And from their perspective, she's the level-headed person talking about love and peace and all that kind of stuff. And he's talking about how your ideas are bullshit. So he looks bad in comparison. Though I get why he said it, I fear that that's just going to sway people to her side, even though she is just talking bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, I also found it interesting how she said, let's agree to disagree. Messenian salinity crisis, what a name. So why agree to public debate with an atheist? Is she not there to make a case? Well, I think we've reached the first point in this where we can see some point of difference between them on something tangible, where she doesn't see the core story of Christianity the way and sin the way Richard Dawkins sees it. So again,
as she said, she's a new Christian. She doesn't.
Yeah, I like how she hedges her bets with that. Like, don't take it from me. I'm just a new Christian. I'm still learning. And Yeah, yeah. I'm
But
just
it's yeah. She also said, "I choose to believe in God." Like that's the difference between them, and I struggle to wrap my head around it. How do you choose to believe in
yeah.
something?
I was going to ask you about that. Is that even possible to choose to believe in something?
If I mean,
You either
if
believe
I
it or
could,
you don't.
if I did, I would have chosen to continue believing in Islam because this is not a fun process to leave religion. So I've tried to choose to believe for a long time, and if I guess it brings into doubt the not the sincerity, the truthfulness of the belief. Because if you have the motivation to believe, if you're believing for personal reasons or because you choose to believe it, then that's not the same as being compelled to believe despite what you want. Like the evidence or the proof or the argument should compel you or should make sense to you. Therefore, you have no choice but to believe. That is different than I think it would serve me well to believe, and that's why I'm believing.
Completely different. And I mean, it could be a thing where she does genuinely believe it now, but is framing it that way to avoid um, criticism and perhaps ridicule from her peers. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Mm. Can you imagine like a judge saying that I choose to believe that you're not guilty? That would sound very suspicious. Like I don't
Mhm.
trust that judge's judgment. But if the judge were to say, I have no choice but to believe that you're not guilty or
Mhm.
that you are guilty, then that seems like a best choice,
Exactly. Yeah. Athena says something interesting. Kind of, you start praying, making connections in your brain, and eventually it feels natural.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't think she ever made that connection between, or she didn't clarify which God was she praying to, or what did she say in her prayers? Was it just, please help me get out of this tight spot that I'm in and help me with my self medication and so on? Or was it, Jesus, my Lord and Savior, please hear my cries? Which one was it?
Again, like I appreciate that she's saying it like this without calling to the miraculous experience, even though she said that she had a miracle in terms of her not being depressed anymore.
Mhm.
We're not hearing some kind of story like, I was at a waterfall and just in that moment I felt the beauty and tranquility of
And I don't
God and the presence
necessarily
of
need
God and
that story
everything.
from her, but I want to know if she prayed to a general God and then now she found Christianity. How did she make that link?
That link is the something that's missing. Let's see if she gets to it, but I think she's about to talk about Islam some more instead.
Politics is why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Growing up as a Muslim, when I was taught that really the only way for you to be faithful is to fear, naked fear, and to have these sets of obligations which you basically obey. And that was very much about power, it was centered around
How could
hellfire
you not
and
say
all
the
of
same
these
thing about
other
Christianity?
things. And so
Not her Christianity,
Christianity,
though.
as I experienced, I'll give you an example. When I was an
As
atheist
I
and I was going
experienced.
all over both the United States and all over Europe, mocking Christians, making fun of them, making fun of faith, as you're
Oh,
doing now, dear Richard. I was walking with 6 to 7 men at any given time, protecting me armed from things that I said that were offensive to Muslims, or Muslims thought were offensive to them. Christians were writing me letters saying, we're going to pray for you, you're misguided. And I think that alone defines for me the distinction between Christianity in general, mainstream Christianity and mainstream Islam.
Well, I must say,
Isn't
okay.
this the fallacy of presentism? Like right now, Christianity is pretty tame. Therefore, Christianity has always been tame.
I mean, that comes to mind, and also like how anecdotal is that? Well, the Muslims were mean to me, and the Christians were not mean to me. So Christianity is thus true and better. Case closed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard her make that example before. Not very convinced thus far.
And also, I don't disagree with her about the role of fear in Islam, like what she was
Oh
talking
no, it
about as
totally
well.
it totally is a mainstay. I had that fear of hell. I had a fear of a lot of things, fear of God watching me all the time. The thing that comes back to me though is when I learned a lot about Christianity and heard the perspectives of people who left Christianity, there was a lot of overlap, a lot of similar experiences.
Mhm. And I feel like this comparison to Islam, like she could argue that Christians are more about love right now than Muslims are. Absolutely, I agree with her on that. But I feel like she's comparing them because it's a favorable comparison for Christianity. but it doesn't say anything about Christianity in a vacuum. It's kind of like how Muslims compare Islam to Christianity when talking about monotheism, and how the Holy Trinity doesn't make sense, and how the books have not been preserved. It's specifically the things that make their religion look better, but objectively in a vacuum, it has nothing to do with the truth. The preservation of a book or monotheism has nothing to do with the truth of a religion. Same goes for how nice the followers are, or whether it's built on fear or love.
I think it might have to do something with the mentality that exists with people who were raised in a religion, even after they leave it, where you're really taught that, well, we need to have an answer to all of life's big questions, for where we came from, why are we here, and when you're confronted with the reality that, okay, maybe this religion, this answer that I thought was right, could be wrong, it seems to me that the inclination to just then say, okay, maybe we just don't know, and I can proceed from that, seems to be like a non-option for a lot of people who've left a religion, where they feel like, well, okay, let me find the next best answer, the answer that sounds better. And again, it doesn't seem to be concerned with the truth of whether this actually describes reality. It's like, well, I have to have an answer. And I think I've seen that in a lot of the ex-Muslim Christians that comment on videos on my channel, where here's the same kind of thing, where, well, at least Christianity doesn't do this thing that Islam does. Well, Christianity is nowhere near as harmful as Islam. And again, you might have a point there in the present day, but that still doesn't answer that the question of whether or not your religion is true.
Right. I mean, I'd be more impressed, or actually more compelled to listen further, if she was talking about finding some random I don't know, temple in the mountains, and she's following this obscure spiritual text. That would be, then okay, how did that help you? How did that happen? But Christianity, the other big religion, there's no surprise there. It's more likely that it is out of convenience or proximity or familiarity than it is out of objectively being the truth. But not to discredit everything that she's going to say. I still want to hear the other stuff that she's going to say.
Let's continue.
Mhm.
I've never met a vicar that I didn't like. I mean, they're always very, very nice people.
Yeah.
But
I know
nevertheless,
sheikhs
the
that I
stuff they
wouldn't like.
believe is obvious nonsense. And you have to take the whole package. because
Thank you,
talk about
Richard.
Jesus rising from the
Yes.
dead. You don't believe Jesus rose from the dead, surely.
Again, he's
I
asking her the
choose to
specific
believe that
question.
Jesus rose from the dead.
You
And
choose
that
to
is-
believe
yes,
this.
and that is a matter of choice. And it's a matter. I think it has to go back to: is there something or is there nothing? And I think you
Again,
start with there is nothing.
no.
And yes, for years I agreed with you. There's nothing.
This is the mentality that I'm talking about, where, well, we have to have an answer. Like, saying I don't know is unacceptable. Like, I don't know why
What
it
is
has to be
this
framed
something
as,
or nothing? Like, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about the universe? Because obviously there is something. Are we talking about a specific and concise answer? Is that what she means, you think?
I really don't know. Like, the thing that she keeps going back to is, I choose to believe. Like, I'm always wondering, like, this emphasis of choose. Like, is it just a simple get out of jail free card? Well, you can't hold me to these things and how they seem to be nonsensical, because I'm choosing to do it. I really
It
don't
sounds
understand.
more like I choose to say that I believe, rather than I choose to believe. Because if they actually believe, they'd say, yes, absolutely, I believe
Yeah.
that Jesus rose from the dead because I chose to believe it, rather than saying, I choose to believe.
Yeah, it's very odd.
Yeah.
But if you come around to the idea that there might be something much more powerful than we are,
Something.
something that caused everything else, then
Something like
something like
Jesus.
Jesus rising out of the dead, or these other miracles, Jesus being born out of a virgin, for that higher power is not a big deal. But again, it's a matter of choice, and it's
True,
different
true.
planes of perception. And I think here, on this plane of perception, having been a former atheist, I don't think this is something we're going to resolve tonight or agree on right now.
Well,
and so
The
that
point
is-
isn't to
So,
agree.
Aladdin, what plane of perception are you on currently?
I'm just operating on 3D. I don't know about you. I haven't evolved to choose to believe in 4D. But yeah, she's using a lot of words that aren't exactly like that's not the point here. The point is not to agree on this. It's to try to understand where you're coming from. And she defensively keeps saying, that's just my choice. That's just what I concluded. I can't convince you of anything. I get it. Like maybe
It's something like a defense mechanism where you can't attack it then, because then you're just attacking someone's free choice.
I guess, or she's saying I can't prove it. You just have to choose to believe like me, or you have to choose. Once you choose to believe in Jesus, then you believe in Jesus.
I've actually heard that from Christians before, like that you have to open your hearts and actually be willing to believe, and then it will come to you.
She said something so noteworthy a few seconds ago. I just can't remember what it was right now.
Okay, let me go back. Let's see if I can go
Yeah,
back.
let's quickly hear it again.
Well, here on this plane, Jesus being born out of a virgin.
Oh yeah.
For
I
that
remember.
higher power is not a big deal. But again,
Okay,
it's a matter
pause.
of choice, and it is just different planes of.
Again, it's a matter of choice. No, it's not. The truth is not a matter of choice. But also, what she is saying is, if you can conceive of something larger, if you can conceive of an all-powerful God, essentially, I'm not quoting, I'm paraphrasing. If you can conceive of a God that can do anything, then a miracle is no big deal. But the question isn't hypothetically if there were a God that can do anything. The question is, do you believe that there is a God who can do anything, and specifically that he did this one thing, and his name is Jesus, or his name is Yahweh, or whatever? She doesn't answer that. She says, hypothetically, it could happen, right? And I'm with you.
Yeah.
We agree with her.
You could have a winged horse fly and ascend to heaven, perhaps.
Hypothetically, we could be in the same room right now. Hypothetically.
We could be the same person, hypothetically.
We could be. Yeah,
allegedly.
we could be a God that split into two people, but that's all hypothetical. Are we saying that we are in the same room? That's not the same thing.
Well said.
Yeah.
Perception. And I think here on this plane of perception, having been a former atheist, I don't think this is something we're going to resolve tonight or agree on right now.
Well,
and so that is where I think it's perhaps more interesting, even if you choose not to believe, to say, let's at least talk about the value of Christianity for today. For I look at these universities, the most illustrious universities of the West.
I think she needs to mention Islam. It's been too long.
Of young women draped in kefirs, the symbol of Hamas,
there we go,
performing the Muslim prayer. And tell me if those kids are not morally and utterly lost.
The question is about, do you believe in Jesus rising from the dead? Not about politics or Palestine or kafiyas or Hamas. And she said this phrase, even if you choose not to believe, you can at least agree with me on the moral value of Christianity. That's a bullshit premise to begin with, because we're not choosing to not believe. We're compelled to not believe. And we can agree or disagree on the moral usefulness of Christianity, but the question wasn't at all about, is Christianity better than Islam, or do you think you could do more good in the world if you claim to be a Christian? Because then she can go on all she wants and she's right. But the question is, do you believe in Jesus rising from the dead? Not how useful is it to believe that Jesus is rising from the dead because people are wearing kafiyas.
Yep. I mean, like after the third attempt, she did finally answer that she chooses to believe it. So some progress there.
You and I and Steven Pinker and all of those wonderful people were locked up in our ivory towers. Let's ask ourselves what was happening on the ground, because in the last 6 decades, we pretty much demonized Christianity and the teachings of Christianity out of the public space, out of school, out of universities, and a vacuum occurred, and that vacuum is now being filled, as G.K. Chesterton said, not because people have come to reason, but because now they'll believe in anything. There are very awful forces today out there that are claiming the hearts and minds and souls of these young students. And when you say there is nothing, you offer them nothing.
We're getting into the
I mean, there are Christians right now who believe in very batshit things, in the US, with all sorts of conspiracy theories and harmful beliefs. It's not like they had a vacuum of faith that was filled with bad ideas. You can have both. So I don't think what she's characterizing as the reality is actually the reality.
No, I don't think so either. And again, we come back to that whole, if you give people nothing, then they take nothing. And this is something I talked about in my videos. I think this is like a crucial misunderstanding of what atheism is. Atheism isn't a life philosophy. It's not a way of life. It's just a statement or a stance on you not believing in a God. And then you don't stay there. You then move on and then build a life philosophy. You build a worldview. You build values. And so it almost seems like this naive perception of her in her plane of perception of atheism, where she's saying, well, atheism is just nothing, and there's nothing else there besides the things of religion. And I think that's really excluding a lot of the things that secular humanists are all about. Someone like Richard Dawkins is all about, just to name one of many examples.
And she seems to think that if you don't have Christianity in the schools, like she's implicitly calling for Christianity in schools
Yeah,
right now,
yeah.
which she
Or
just
else
slipped
Islam
in
is going to
there.
get in there.
Yeah, or else not just Islam, but bad ideas that are tangentially related to Islam or Hamas or terrorism or something, or people unwittingly supporting terrorism is what she's trying to say, because they're not good Christians. But she was talking about here on the ground, not in the ivory towers. Well, are you aware of people's difficulty to get abortions, for example, people's rights being taken away? That's happening on the ground, not in your ivory towers. So she seems to think again that if Christianity was here, it would save us from a lot of things that it wasn't saving us from to begin with.
So you're not religious, so you're saying that you don't believe in nothing?
I
Do
don't
you
believe
believe?
that's a very confusing statement. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like she's got you all figured out, Aladdin.
Damn.
Bigger
Okay.
political, cultural question. I just feel it's worth pressing one more time on this. What you said, agree to disagree, and I understand, having read Richard's letter to you, that
I
literal
love this guy
belief
so
is
far.
the bit that he
Yeah,
can't
he's good.
get past. Are you saying that you don't literally believe those things? You talked about planes of reality. Is it that you see a beauty in those things and
Correction,
Perception.
planes of
your
perception.
rational judgment, or
Yeah.
do you
Perception.
literally believe?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something subjective, and there's a choice. There are things that you see and perceive that a different person cannot perceive.
Wow.
Art,
Okay, let's see where she's
music.
going.
In fact, I think you do enjoy a great deal of Christian art and music. I will look at a painting by Pollock, and I will think my 6-year-old must have spilled all the paint on the canvas and run around. And people are crazy enough to pay millions of dollars and hang it on walls.
So
But
now
I've
it's a
actually
commentary on
seen
art.
people be moved to tears staring at a Pollock. That is a plane of perception that is real, but that's also very, very
Called
difficult
projection.
to measure. And it's the same the way you're moved by certain pieces of music. So the fact that I have faith, and I choose to have faith because of what I've experienced, is just as real for me as it is for the millions of people who believe. But for me, what is even more real is it's the story itself and the wisdom in that story, the morality that has come out, that has evolved out of that story,
So
the
just say
eternal
no.
debates of millennia long and everything that we inherited from it. It's just too casual to cast that aside. And when we've done it, I think we have caused ourselves a great deal of damage.
Okay, we'll
Before he answers. By the way, I quickly Googled Jackson Pollock just to see what
Yeah.
the style of his paintings are, and it's like
it's the
paint-
splatter on the
Yeah.
on the canvas kind of stuff. Yeah.
So if someone cries while looking at that, they're projecting their own emotions or their interpretation on it. It doesn't mean that the painting is truly that deep. And then she compares it to music. I'm sorry, but you can't compare splashes of paint to a well-composed musical piece.
How
It's as if
dare you.
someone just banged. Now, I'm not saying that paintings can't be beautiful, but like one has some kind of structure and flow to it, and the other one is, paint thrown at a canvas. That would be as if someone was crying listening to an orchestra of people banging on their instruments. That's not the same thing. It's a very weird comparison that she just made. But yeah.
The thing that makes me think, well, the painting is real though for both those. It's like identifiably, objectively real for the person who thinks it's shit and the person who's weeping in tears, like weeping and collapsing
you
on their
can-
knees looking at this painting.
Yeah, and you can answer the question, is there a man being crucified on the painting, depicted on the painting, yes or no? Like, you can try to see him in the patterns if you want to, but it should be easy to say, yes, I can see that or not. But she didn't answer that question. I'm curious to see what Richard says, because he seemed like he was eager to say it.
He was eager to pounce. Yeah, and Eloise
Yeah.
says Jordan Peterson core. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities in what Jordan Peterson says, actually.
Richard, having heard that story, that moving story from Ayan of clearly how her conversion has helped her, and also she's explained in beautiful words the mode in which she believes
The
it.
mode,
Do you still
the
say
plane
you
of
are not a Christian?
perception.
No, not at all. I came here prepared to persuade you, Ayan, you're not a Christian. I think you are a Christian. And I think Christianity is nonsense.
Again,
you have to be, I mean,
not productive.
you appear to be a theist. You appear to believe in some kind of higher power. Now, I think that the hypothesis of theism is the most exciting scientific hypothesis we could possibly hold. And the idea that the universe was actually created by a supernatural intelligence is a dramatic, important idea. If it were true, it would completely change everything we know. We'd be living in a totally different universe. Now, that's a big thing. I'm sorry, but it's bigger than personal comfort and nice stories and things. The idea that the universe has lurking beneath it an intelligence, a supernatural intelligence that invented the laws of physics, that invented mathematics. I mean, that is a stupendous idea, if it's true. And to me, that simply dwarfs all talk of nobility and morality and comfort and that sort of thing.
So would you have preferred for your erstwhile new atheist colleague, Ayan, not to have converted? Having heard her story, would you rather?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying that religious belief is bigger than what gives you comfort. Or it's bigger than morality, it's bigger than what gives you comfort, it's bigger than what gives you a bulwark against Islam. It's something huge, it's something terrific, and it's false.
Are you not moved at all to, she mentioned planes of reality. Is it for you entirely black
Perception.
and white, whether those kind of stories are true or not? It feels like Ayan is saying that she chooses.
This is a question to a
because she
scientist.
accesses some kind of greater truth via them and is less interested in the details. You're not softened at all on that?
Well, I'm softened by a personal story, and I'm softened by beautiful music. I mean, I'm softened by St. Matthew Passion, and not just the music itself, but the story behind it. It's a very moving story, and I'm moved by it in the same way as I'm moved by great fiction. It is fiction, and one of course can be moved by fiction. I think Ayan has described me as the most Christian person she knows, and
Yes.
and that may be true in certain senses, in a cultural sense, and I certainly, when you say, excuse me, when you say Christianity is a religion of love, Jesus, I think, was a very, very great character, a very loving character. The bad things about Christianity actually stem mostly from what came afterwards, and Paul and the other Christian apologists who came after him.
So you cannot allow the possibility that Ayan has access to truth that you yourself have not seen.
It is a scientific hypothesis that there is a supernatural creator. And I don't see how you can get to that from feelings of personal comfort or feelings of political necessity. You have to get to that from thinking.
And that brings us to consciousness. So first of all, the hypothesis itself, which...
Anything you want to say before we let Hirsi Ali respond to that? I mean, I think I'm pretty much completely aligned with what Dawkins said there. I think he hit the nail on the head. Like, you can't just decide on these sorts of things with feelings of comfort and wishful thinking.
Facts don't care about your feelings, as they say.
No, like you said, it's just too important.
Yeah, I think it's there's just, I'm trying to see it from both perspectives, because I can see a theist watching this and he sounds like a cold, calculated, unempathetic
Materialist.
Materialist, surface level understanding type of person who's even saying multiple times that it's bullshit, it's fiction, I don't believe in it. I think that there's time and space for that, but time and a place, but that's not exactly the time where you should be reaffirming that it is fiction. We know you believe that it is fiction. So that's the one criticism that I would have for him here. And I pretty much agree with him. I don't have a problem with her finding comfort in Christianity. In fact, I don't have a problem with her being a Christian. I just want to understand how she made a link to Christianity. And it sounds to me that she doesn't actually believe that, these things happened, and many Christians wouldn't even classify her as a Christian necessarily, but that she thinks Christianity is useful. And I disagree with her understanding of how useful Christianity is, or how the world is lost without it.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said too. I mean, I think it comes down to just a different way of looking at different. I'm going to use that from now on. A different plane of perception when it comes to these things. I think there are a lot of people. So there are the theists who take these things very literally, like Jesus actually was resurrected, Jesus existed, was born of an immaculate conception, so on and so forth. But I do think there's a lot of believers who just see these things as useful universal truths, as metaphors that guide our lives. And because they have this universal truth, then the question of whether they factually happened or not is kind of irrelevant. What matters is that we believe they are, and that they dictate our reality and inform us about ourselves. And that's all you need to take from it.
Mhm.
And
And the last thing, yeah, go ahead.
no, I mean, like, I was just going to say, I guess covering this already earlier, is that's all well and good, but when it comes down to it, there are tangible things that people are doing in the world, actions they're taking or actions they're not taking because of those beliefs.
And I'm curious what the title of the debate was specifically, because
It's just the
yeah,
God debate. The God debate.
okay, because I'm not sure if he was prepared for a debate about the utility of Christianity and the history of Christianity and the reality of how it affects people. That's a very different debate than why do you specifically believe?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to debate about why she believes. You can't debate someone out of their belief or tell them you're wrong that you believe. But it's a whole nother debate if she wants to talk with someone who has the background or interest to talk about whether or not her statements are true about the necessity for Christianity. That would be a debate I'm more interested in, to be honest. And the one thing that
Definitely.
what I don't like about her, what she's doing right now, is she's playing a lot of identity politics more than she seems to realize or more than seems on the surface. And this is not going to help Christians be more humble or be better people or find, a better world through Christianity. This serves to tell Christians, hey, you guys are good. Muslims are crap, and we need more of you guys. You just keep doing what you're doing while ignoring all the harm that is being done in the name of Christianity or by Christians.
Yeah. Oh, and let's rally because the enemy is at the gates. And
Right.
yeah, that's something I want to get into with you as we proceed, because I think they're going to start talking about Islamism and stuff like that now.
Mhm.
Let's see what they go into next.
Even if you don't allow for set religion aside, the hypothesis of where did all this come from and how did it begin, again, there is no consensus on that. There is no consensus on what consciousness is and what all that entails. But I think that it is, on an academic level, very interesting and very rewarding to look into and explore all of these different things separately on an academic level. On a non-academic level, I think that it's very useful now. I hate to go back to utility, but to have all of these
No,
things
you don't.
connected, where as human beings, we are material, yes, but we also are more than material. We have a sense of consciousness and we have a range of needs. And some of these needs, reason can answer and pure science can answer. But some of these needs cannot be answered by that. And I think faith in a higher power, in God, and in the story that makes sense of it all, gives it meaning, is very, very important for human beings. And the danger lies in trying to conflate these different planes and then casting aside as useful. It is false, it's useful, it's useless, it's unnecessary. And now we have, the range of human suffering where, as an atheist, you don't really offer an answer, you don't offer a prescription for this is a way of life, this is the path to happiness, this is how you can deal with the challenges of existence. And atheism is an attitude. It basically says, as of now, there is no evidence to show that God exists or that a higher power exists, full stop. And you figure the rest of it out. And it's very, very difficult to figure the rest of it out starting from scratch. And I think faith then gives meaning and purpose. And yes, if you're afraid of the dark, and if you're afraid of whatever it is that's causing you anxiety, or whatever is causing you self-doubt, relationships between other human beings, I think Christianity does offer a recipe, and perhaps, in my view, the best recipe for not only how to live with yourself and connect to the universe, but also how to connect with fellow human beings, and then bring about a civilization like this one.
Suppose it were true that atheism.
So I have a few issues again with her description of what atheism is. Again, I think it almost comes off as if she doesn't really understand what atheism is, because ultimately it doesn't have any substance. You can call it maybe an attitude, but it doesn't tell you anything about what the world is like and how to proceed in life. So, I mean, I don't understand this mentality where it again, it's like a something or nothing. The something of faith, that's better, a better offering than the nothing of atheism.
Yeah, I mean, atheism is like saying it's like a position on whether or not my phone is charged, right? And that position, whether or not it's charged or whether or not I believe it's charged, doesn't say anything about whether I can make plans tonight or what to do with my life tonight. It's two separate things, and I think she somewhat acknowledges that, and she's basically saying if you just focus on the position of there is no God, then your life is kind of empty, which seems like what she was doing before, that she was focusing too hard on proving that there is no God or arguing with people who say that there is a God. And those people can be stuck in that position of just being like, okay, what else? What else is there? What other opinions do I have? How do I go forward? So I see it from that perspective. But the part that I want to hear more about is she said that Christianity has the best recipe for, oh no, what is my cat doing? Come back. He's not supposed to be up there. Anyway, I'll wrap this up so I can go get him down. I want to know why Christianity has the best recipe. Like, tell us more about that. What other recipes have you tried?
Okay, well, I think Dawkins is speaking next, so let's see.
Theism doesn't offer anything. Suppose it doesn't offer anything. So what? Why should it offer anything? Why should the universe offer you anything?
Amen, Dawkins. Amen.
But what is the scientific explanation for you being moved to tears by Sir Matthew's passion?
Well, it's neurology. Let me ask Ian.
I think the question you ask now is very interesting. Why should atheism offer you anything? There is no reason why atheism should offer anything, but something else. Faith offers something valuable and tangible and
Yes,
real. So why should atheism mock that and knock it down?
No,
Is
I
it
don't
not
want to mock
possible
it.
to have this coexistence where there is a place
Let
for
him speak.
reason and there is a place for faith and for subjectivity? Just like we agree to have a separation between religion and politics, I think it is absolutely possible to have, and Christianity allows for that, a separation of science and the material world, the temporal world, versus the world of faith. And these things, when they complement each other, I think lead to a much more powerful outcome than when you, again, I find the differences between us a little cosmetic and a little artificial, because there are so many things I agree with that you are saying. It's just that the
She's starting to lose me.
attitude that atheists take, that if you do not see the world the way they see it, and if you don't live according to reason, you must be an idiot, you must be unintelligent, you must be
No,
stupid.
no.
I think that is a bit that
Is that the
just
attitude she
smacks
took?
of-
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, I was going to bring this up later when they were talking about Islamism specifically, but I have to bring it up now because I think it's really relevant. So, in my opinion, here's the danger of following down the path of Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Let's say tackling the problem of Islam, if we want to talk about that specifically. One of the dangers of Islam is that the adherents, like the Muslims, are believing this thing based on blind faith. Like there's no, they can't really explain why the things that they believe are true or justified. And so when you're presenting Christianity, which also is built on blind faith, as the bulwark, the thing to combat that, it then becomes a he said, she said, they said thing where Ayaan Hirsi Ali says, well, according to me, I choose, according to my subjective experience. The Muslim can say that as well, and it will be just as valid. It will be just as, you can't argue against it. So
I mean,
how can you
she might
present
argue with
something?
results. She might argue and say, look at the West, look at the East, and that kind of thing.
But again, what if the Muslims she's talking to, or whoever, like maybe Christians who are a bit more extreme than her, have a different viewpoint on what is a good or bad result? Because you could talk to some theists who believe that the world coming to an end tomorrow is a good thing because it will usher in, the afterlife, judgment day, and
Well,
all that.
she
kind of stuff.
assumes that she's appealing to everyone like her, who's educated, who appreciates civilization and appreciates life and that kind of thing. And I think she simplifies why, to put it, simply, the West is succeeding and the East is not succeeding. She thinks it's Christianity. Christianity is why the US is much better than Iraq, for example, because it's Christianity versus Islam. She doesn't seem to put a lot of importance on so many factors that went into it. Like, I can see in a parallel reality, Islam could have been that driving force, or people could have been following Islam the way that people follow Christianity, despite the differences, despite Islam having a lot more fear in the way that it is being taught, and in its core components even. But yeah, to answer what you were saying, she would think, I mean, I assume she would think, yeah, they're both built on blind faith, and you can arrive at bad things using blind faith. But look at the results, and Christianity has better results. That's what she seems to think.
Results according to her.
Right.
That's what we will come down to again, over and over again. And this is why we do need reason. We do need evidence-based conclusions, because that is a foundation where we can actually show people, okay, the way you're doing things is problematic for A, B, C, D reasons. If we agree that A, B, C, D is the kind of outcome we want, and E, F, whatever, G, H are the outcomes we don't want. But when you start with the appeal to faith, then it's kind of all over the place, because it ends up just being whatever people want to do based on their emotional needs. And that's really behind a lot of the harm that we're seeing being done in the name of religion all over the world. So I really don't understand this point of her at all.
And what she was saying about how Richard, or how an atheist would perceive the idiocy of someone who believes, or that someone who believes is an idiot or something, I think she's projecting. Like, she was severely harmed by Islam and by a lot of Muslims, and threatened, and people around her were harmed and killed. So she thought that, anyone who believes in Islam, or a theist in general, is an idiot. And now she's realizing, oh wait, there are a lot of nice people who are theists, and they have nothing to do with Islam, which is, the devil in her world. Then therefore, atheists are all wrong. When I think Richard was just about to argue with that.
Okay, let's see what he says.
Okay, let's not go there. I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
What I do want to say is this: faith offers you something. Obviously, that's very, very, very clear, but it doesn't make it true. It doesn't make the existence claims of Christianity true. There is a difference from saying that being in a certain psychological place is consoling and comforting and offers you a meaning of life, and gives you a purpose in life. All those things, which are wonderful, and I have them too. They're a bit different, but I too have a purpose in life. I have a meaning in life. But just simply because something gives you a meaning and a purpose in life, it doesn't make the existential claims true. And Christianity, like any other religion, makes claims about the world, about the universe, which are either true or not true. And I may be wrong, and you may be right. They may be true, but the mere fact that they're comforting doesn't make them true. That's an important point.
But I agree with you on that point. The mere fact that they are comforting doesn't make them true. But the hypothesis that there's something rather than nothing is something you can't disprove, as much as I can't prove materially that
Yes.
Jesus was born out of a virgin. So
Yes.
I think it's some of these areas where I think it's a very, very important debate that occurred but 200
I
years
agree.
ago.
We can have that debate, and
Yeah.
that's an important debate, and that's the one I would like to have, rather than the one that's comforting. I mean, for example, I would like to know whether you think that we survive our bodily death when our brain dies. When I asked you that when we had dinner together, and you said no, have you changed your mind about that?
I'm sorry, please repeat. What have I changed my mind about?
About life after death, about
Do we
surviving.
survive our bodily
I
existence?
said, do you think we survive our own death? And you said no.
I said yes. Bodily, no. I do not. I don't survive death. I don't
No.
think you will survive death. I said that when Bertrand Russell said, "When we die, we shall rot."
Yes.
That is true.
But your
then
soul, or
what
whatever.
happens to the soul, consciousness, etc.? That again, I don't.
So you think there is a soul that survives death?
Well, there is something that.
Something,
again, like
not
I said,
nothing.
I did feel a connection, and that wasn't. It wasn't a bodily connection. It was a connection through consciousness and mind. And
Wait,
if
can you
that's going
pause for a
to
second?
outlast me or not?
Wow.
How can you
Wow.
compare? Have you ever perceived a connection that is bodily and a connection that is one of soul and mind and consciousness, and then compared the two and thought, well, this falls into that category? Like, if all of you perceived is through your body, how would you know what qualifies as a non-body experience?
You can't. Actually, I was going to make that point earlier when she was talking about consciousness and how it's separate from the body. We can't know that. I mean, as far as we can tell, consciousness goes away once the brain ceases to function. And
And
taking this
yeah,
leap again because it feels good. I mean, I'm starting to see that this is getting really repetitive, right? And by the way, low key, this is not a debate. Would you agree with me there? This is like a
yeah, because
conversation.
and I don't like calling things debates when they're not. If
Well,
it's a
they're
debate,
calling
they
it a
have to have.
debate.
They're wrong for that. You have to talk about what is being debated, and let's see who makes better points. This is just a conversation because you can't debate about her beliefs. But
No.
yeah, she does this thing where she says we have to agree to disagree, or neither of us can be proven materially. We both agree that this is not provable or disprovable. But I felt something that is not a bodily emotion or connection or whatever she said. You can't just reintroduce feelings, because then the question would be, how have you ever felt something? Like, what do you compare it to? What is your frame of reference? How do you know that it is not a bodily feeling? How do you know it's not the same feeling you get on DMT, for example, or whatever other substance or chemical? How do you distinguish?
You can't. You just can't. And that's where I guess in the end you hit a wall with people like her because they they choose to believe or they believe what they believe, whatever way you want to describe it, and because they get all this value and utility from it, they're just going to stick with it. I think that's what's so refreshing about her, honestly, is because she's not
Mhm.
appealing to miracles in the Bible, prophecies being proven, or anything like that. She's actually saying it for what it is. It makes her feel good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about that. But Richard, I do know where you stand on this debate, and
So
that is.
we could spend the next
Okay,
half hour
okay,
going through
Yes.
different theological points and seeing whether Ayan agrees with it or not. But there is this bigger cultural, societal impact point that
Yes.
you've really been in the middle of, Richard. You came out as a cultural Christian, or at
Well, I
least
didn't. I mean, I've been a cultural Christian all along, and I've never said anything else.
there was a lot of social media excitement recently that you had decided, or you had confirmed that you were a cultural Christian. This is, I suppose, the political Christianity point that Ayan has also been making. If you accept that there is utility to faith at an individual level and at a societal level, how do you feel about what you have done and your fellow new atheists for the past few decades in so enthusiastically dismantling it?
I am so much more wedded to the importance.
Oh, actually, let's see the status of the poll question in the live chat, actually. So the question was, have the new atheists done more harm than good in the world? 71% say no, and 29% say yes. Okay, all right. Well, let's see how Richard
That
Dawkins
is a great
defends it.
question by the host, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. He wasn't
No,
paid to
not
say
just
that.
you, but the host on the video as well. But you too.
Thank you.
Of truth that I don't regret anything.
Yeah.
I do think that if, for example, in Africa, there are missionaries, Christian missionaries, and Muslim missionaries fighting for people's loyalty, and I'm on Team Christianity where that's concerned. And so politically, if you have to have a religion,
Will you explain that to us a little bit more?
if you have to, I don't believe you have to have a religion. I think it's patronizing to suggest that people do need a religion. But if they do need a religion, then I'd rather it was Christianity than anything else.
So the dream world, according to Dawkins, would be nobody having a religion, and
Yes.
then in second place Christianity, and then
Yes.
Islam comes last.
Yes.
Do you agree with that, Halim?
Okay.
You said
I guess I would, yeah. I mean, you have to categorize all the other religions in this. Like, is Islam the worst religion, organized religion out there? I don't know. I'd have to really think about it. But there's a lot
No,
of
and I
bad
mean
religions out there.
specifically also the part about his dream world. Would your dream world be, no religion? Then next would be Christians.
Well, I guess so. I think, but it's about how we get to it. I think my dream world would be where we all shed organized religion because we realize we don't need it. Obviously, I wouldn't endorse some kind of, you know, authoritarian regime that forces people to stop being religious. Not that that would work anyway, but yeah, I would say I think the world would be a better place if we just, of our own desire and volition, shed it.
My dream world would, it's not necessarily that people would have no religion, but there would be no beliefs that are widely adopted that can lead to harm. So some might think that that is theism in general, because if you believe that God said something and there's room for interpretation, there's room for harm. So if there were to exist a religion that is really harm proof in a sense, and is not as restrictive and authoritarian as the ones that we're used to, and that were to, take over, or a lot of people were to believe in it, that sounds okay to me, as long as it's not oppressing the people who don't believe in it or harming the people who do believe in it. But more realistically, I guess it would be a world with less religious influence. Yeah,
Exactly,
that would
yeah.
be my dream world.
I mean, I guess I'll adjust my answer based on what you just shared. I suppose I would say that we wouldn't have organized religions that aren't based on, verifiable truth, because I think where the harm of organized religion comes from is when they claim to know things that we don't know for sure, and then try to dictate our lives based on those unfounded claims. I think
Mhm.
that in of itself inevitably leads to harm, even if the religion only has benign beliefs, benign teachings on the surface. The harms come in, they sneak in other ways.
Agreed.
All right, let's. Will we ever disagree about anything, Aladdin?
I think that's
Behind the
fantastic.
scenes a
And I
lot.
also want to say, you, you don't have to go as far as Africa to see this confrontation between Team Christianity and Team Islam, and Team Christianity versus Team Wokeism. It's right here. There is a great deal of Islamic missionary work that has been very successful in Britain and in the US and in other parts of Europe. And I think Team Christianity or Team Christian um, is is less confident here in the world of Christian civilization than, say, in Africa. And I want to go one step further and call upon Team Christianity to counter this message, because it's a very powerful message. And even if you and I disagree on whether there is God and whether there is creation, I respect your view. I know you respect mine. But
Are you inviting Richard Dawkins to join Team Christianity?
Richard Dawkins is on Team Christianity.
Do you accept that, Richard Dawkins? Are you on Team Christianity?
But
If it's
Richard
a
Dawkins,
choice,
Wait, what did he say?
Richard Dawkins just said
If it's a
that. But I
choice.
think,
If it's a choice, yeah.
and I really mean
Okay.
this in a serious way. I look at those young people in their 20s, in their teens, in their 30s, and right now they're being offered these messages of moral frameworks that they're embracing, that are cultish, that are based on fear, that are nihilistic, and that are dead end. And so if you say you're on Team Christianity, then I would encourage those who are so inclined as to advance Christianity not to worry about Africa, but to start it here. Stand up to those
yes,
people
I
in
didn't quite
Columbia
hear
and Harvard and
what's the
NU.
problem. What are you against here?
The young people have been susceptible to other ideologies that
Yes,
are
but what
far
other
inferior.
ideologies? What are we speaking of there?
Well, there are mosques and Islamic centers that have convinced young people here in America and in Britain and elsewhere that Christianity is dead, has nothing to offer, that Western civilization is a moral vacuum, and that they're here to fill it. And to my astonishment, it seems as if they're making an impact. Look at all these so-called pro-Palestine protests, which are not really pro-Palestine. These are, in my view, clearly, in many ways, they're adopting the religious frameworks offered by Islamists. And what I see is not what you saw in the 1960s. That's a different story. What you're seeing now is a moral vacuum that is being filled moral vacuum left behind, left untended by
And what is your
Okay, lots there. We knew that Palestine would have to be mentioned at some point, I guess. Yeah,
So I have thoughts. I don't know if you want to go first.
please go ahead.
So she said the world of Christian civilization. Again, she gets away with giving credit to Christianity when she hasn't properly made that point. Or she seems to think that because Christianity was in this history of the Western civilization, that it is the prerequisite and the cause of Western civilization. So that's one thing that I want to highlight. And she said that it's on Team Christianity to counter Team Islam. I don't disagree with her that it is concerning to see dawah centers and even on social media. I've spoken to people who are neither Muslim or ex-Muslim who are somewhat swayed or afraid because of what the dawah people say. Not afraid of like an Islamic invasion, but more like, what if they're right about God? What if there is moral bankruptcy? And they point out, they point to examples of bad things happening in the so-called West, and they say that's because you don't have God, you don't have Islam. And some people are swayed by that, but I don't see how Team Christianity would solve that. I don't think that the antidote to that is Team Christianity.
Yep, well said. Well said. I'll address the Palestine thing. So, I think I'm personally, and anyone watching who doesn't know, my background is Palestinian. So, take that for what it's worth. But I think that this whole conflation of supporting Palestinians' right to self-determination and the dangers of Islamism is really, really frustrating and really inaccurate. I think though they're not synonymous with each other. So her describing the pro-Palestine protests as not actually being about pro-Palestine is it's pretty false. So I would say that with any protests about anything, really, you're going to attract people who are aligned completely and then more interested in side issues. For example, if there's a protest against something the government has done, you're going to attract people who are angry at the government for all sorts of reasons. You're going to attract people who are anti-capitalism, for example. And I think that's the thing you're seeing with the Palestine movements, where there's a lot of people that are frustrated with all sorts of things that are related to the way Europe is, to the way the Muslims are treated, to the way there is an imperialist impact, colonialist impact on the Middle East. But the core of it is the Palestinian cause for self-determination.
I also have some thoughts about that. So I am not ethnically Palestinian, nor do I have an affinity for them culturally or ethnically or anything of the sort. So because people often dismiss what I say, and they shouldn't dismiss what you say because you have a Palestinian background, but I get that accusation a lot. So I just want to clarify, my position is not because I am Palestinian in any way. I think that it is extremely dismissive of her to say that all the protests for Palestine is because of Islamist movements, when I will say this very boldly, and I've said this before, there are a lot of Muslims who only care or primarily care about Palestine because they see it as a religious cause.
This is true.
Or because
I agree.
of their hatred of Zionists or Jews, even, or Israelis, to be specific. There are people who are in it for the wrong reasons. It doesn't mean that the cause itself is wrong, or that people protesting innocent civilians' deaths is a bad thing, because there are some of them doing it for the wrong reason. And a lot of the people protesting in the so-called West are not Muslims. There are Muslims who are doing it, but there are also a lot of non-Muslims, ethnically non-Arab people protesting it. And most of them, if not all of them, aren't doing it for any Islamist reasons.
Well, those are the woke people with a moral vacuum.
Right. So we can dismiss anyone who's in the other group. So you've got the Islamist group, you've got the Muslim group, you've got the woke group. Then no reasonable person would go to a pro-Palestine protest, let's call it that. That's the way that she's setting it up. And I don't think that is fair.
No,
And
not fair at all. By the way, I'll let you finish, but like I wanted to just mention the comparison that she made to the civil rights movement in the 60s. I think that's what she was referring to, saying it's nothing like the civil rights movement. I think it's important to note that when those protests were happening, they were accused of being violent. They were accused of trying to take over America. They were accused of being conduits for communism to disrupt the country. So every kind of label, every kind of discrediting tactic was used on the civil rights movement, and that's what's happening right now with those who are supporting Palestinians.
I partially agree with some of where she's coming from, but not all the way. So to say, and I've mentioned this before, there are a lot of Dawa people who are grifting off of the Palestinian struggle. They've increased their popularity. They even see it possibly as a chance to spread awareness of Islam, or maybe invite non-Muslims to Islam. Since you're already here and you think we're innocent people and this is an Islamic cause, is how they're framing it. You know, that's a chance to bring in more people. That is actually happening. And there are a lot of people, like I said, who are in it because they are anti-Semitic, or because it's not that they think people dying is a good thing, but it's one more reason to be against people dying, is because it's being done by Jews. So I acknowledge all that. This is not us saying that anyone who supports Palestine is doing it because their heart is pure. And I've pointed this out before. There are a lot of tragedies that happen to Muslims and non-Muslims that are not protested or given as much visibility as this issue. It still does not mean that if someone were to go to a protest in their city that happens to be organized for Palestine, that they're doing it for Islamist reasons, or that they're falling for Islamist propaganda. You could say that that rally would not have happened if not for Islamists being a driving force, for example, in that protest. But it doesn't mean that that protest is wrong fundamentally, or that people protesting deaths in Gaza is a bad thing because there are Islamists and there are people grifting off of this movement.
There you go, people. There's your proof. Aladdin is a secret Muslim, right there.
No side is going to be happy with me, because I'm not saying,
No, really.
yay, pro-Palestine, nor am I saying, and I'm not trying to sit on the fence either. I'm pointing out the reality of it.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
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 And yeah, like one commenter points out that it's not just that the Islamists are grifting off of it. There are people on the opposite side of the aisle, so to speak. They're also grifting from it. There are people who are grifting from just pointing out every instance of Islamists doing a bad thing and showing that, this is why we need to get rid of Muslims, and this is why Islam is terrible. And even though when sometimes they are right, it seems like they're profiting off of it too much. And you got to be careful when someone's message doesn't seem to be balanced to any extent, or doesn't acknowledge any faults on their side.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And Luay says, I think she was comparing it to the Vietnam War protests in the 60s and 70s. Well, the same holds, because even those protesters were accused of being, drug-addled hippies, seduced by communism to destroy America from within. So any kind of delegitimizing technique that they can use, they'll use them for anything that disrupts the status quo. And that's what we're seeing right now with the Palestinian protests.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say about that is to point out, like a commenter was saying, that in the U.S., part of it has to do with the U.S.'s support for Israel and money going to Israel. I'm not making a comment on that. I'm saying people are protesting their tax dollars going towards a war.
So they are personally affected.
Yeah. So maybe that's for some people, another reason. It's not just for humanity or because they care about Palestinians or Muslims, or they have any opinions on Jews. It's because they don't want to be involved as a country or as a taxpayer in that war. And especially not, on the side that is killing more people. Again, that's not a commentary on who's right here, but objectively, there are more people dying on one side. And there are a lot of people who are not happy funding that war.
Your answer to that? Are you hoping for some kind of Christian revival? Then are you now having been a famous new atheist? Would you now be a Christian evangelist?
I think I don't know if you should put it that way. The way I would like to put it is, you have this amazing civilization, you have this amazing societies, and it is pretty frightening to see that the best and the brightest are converting to the mind virus of wokeism and the mind virus of Islamism, and that as atheists, no one even seems to have woken up to the idea. There is a condemnation of wokeism, which you do. You condemn the woke and the mind virus of the woke. You condemn radical Islam. But I think, what do we then have to offer to these young people who are seeking something?
Rational secular humanism. Enlightenment values.
So do you share Ayan's diagnosis, the mind virus of wokeism, as she puts it, of
Yes.
Islamism's return to
Yes.
parts of the West? And enlightenment.
I have to ask a question here, because she, so Hirsi Ali did mention the problem of wokeism in her essay, her original essay, saying why she converted. What is wokeism exactly? Like, how would you define it? I'm not really sure.
I just said that in the live chat.
I really don't know the answer to that.
I mean, Islamism, I don't think she properly defined that one either, but I think that is more easy to get the gist of. But there is no book that wokeists follow, if you can even call people that. I think it's just a catch-all term for anything that her side perceives to be wrong. That's how she's using it.
Yeah, you might be right, because she did not define it in that essay. I mean, to me, it seems like it's, the gender pronoun supporters, the people who are advocating for trans rights, the people who get offended from their perspective very easily from anything that's criticism towards those fronts. Trans women getting involved in female sports, that's what comes to mind when I hear more conservative right-wing people saying that's wokeism. So I'm not really sure if that's what she means or not.
It sounds to me more like a dog whistle than actually a term that is useful in arriving at some sort of conclusion or at actually making a discussion, because people who know what wokeism really means, those are the people who already have their own definitions of wokeism.
Exactly.
So everyone can apply what they mean to wokeism,
Yeah.
One can think that even someone having a pride sticker on their car, that is wokeism. But some other person might not think that that is wokeism. It's actually trans rights that are wokeism. So it's a spectrum, and everyone can apply their own meaning to it, but it captures the attention of all the people who are vaguely interested in the same things or same opinions that she has.
We've got a few definitions from people in the live chat. So Terabyte says, extreme leftist focus on identity politics. Gerwalk, hello Gerwalk, says it's shorthand for anything some do not like. I stick with the original definition of woke and think everyone should be. And so, yeah, it's hard to tell exactly what it means, but like you said, it could just be a dog whistle. HX says, I also think wokeism covers closet racism and sexism. I have heard that as well. I'm not really sure. But yeah, so the threat of wokeism that Dawkins, who has been criticized for transphobic views in the past, I haven't looked into that too much, but I know he has. He has, I think, spoken against wokeism as well.
Humanism doesn't seem to have resisted that advance very successfully.
Well, let's press it harder then.
Rational secular humanism is itself an outcome of Christianity. And
well,
I think
I don't buy that.
It starts with the admission that rational secular humanism, the Enlightenment was able to take place within that Christian context, and it is a product of Christian civilization. It didn't have.
I would almost say that it happened in spite of Christianity and had to shed Christianity or outgrow it. You could maybe make the argument that it provided, having like a Christian dominance in the world provided the ingredients that led eventually to secular humanism, but I wouldn't go as far to say as we should credit it, because that's what its intended goal was, because it clearly is not, if you just look at its core teachings.
I don't necessarily have to completely disagree with her saying that it was a component in the events that led to where we are today, but it's extremely simplistic to say it's because of Christianity that we're where we are today. Like you can't, not even, you have to be God to truly understand all the factors involved and run hypothetical scenarios where you take out a factor and see how the world would turn out to be, to then confidently say it was this factor that caused this. There's no way you could be that certain about anything. And one thing that just came to mind right now is, so she sees wokeism, right, as this huge threat that needs to be fought, kind of like Islamism, but because ever since October 7th, the Islamism threat is larger and is easier for her to capitalize on, with, you know, thinking that Christianity is there to counter it. But where was Christianity to fight slavery in the US? And I know that's not the only instance of slavery or Christian slavery throughout history, but if it failed at fighting slavery, which one causes more harm? Wokeism throughout the entire world, or all the slaves who are harmed, you know, throughout history, the history of the US? Christianity utterly failed at that.
I mean, I've heard some people arguing that it was Christians who pushed for the abolition of slavery in the 1700s and 1800s. Where were they the last 2,000 years? And Imran says, if Christianity caused Western civilization, why did it take 2,000 years? And the magnificent G-Man says, it's like saying Islam gave women rights, which is something you and I have both heard many times, I'm sure.
I know that there's no answer for this, but if you were to compare the harm that is caused by wokeism, and we can agree that there are a lot of takes that are bad that they would consider to be wokest takes, I suppose. We can agree that they're bad, but they would have a label for them that's more encompassing than we do. But even if we agree on that, all the harm caused by so-called wokeism pales in comparison to actual slavery and torture. And Christianity didn't really stop that. So why are we expecting it to stop people having bad opinions that may or may not cause real world harm compared to actual real world harm through slavery?
Because it's better than Islam.
Right.
End
I
of
forgot
argument.
about that part. Yeah.
Happened in China. It didn't happen in the Middle East. It didn't happen anywhere else. It happened in these.
Well,
I think
I don't buy that.
it starts with the admission that rational secular is rated and told and given to these young minds. And I think where you have a vacuum, something is going to fill it. And aside from the personal rewards that I
did you go back?
Christianity,
it went back for some reason.
Christianity. I think there is the
went back a
societal
lot.
and the civilizational context
Oh, no, it
where
didn't. Okay.
this thing is going through the cracks, and without a counter message, a spiritual counter message, I think we're in very, very bad and very, very serious trouble.
It may be true historically that rational secular humanism grew out of Christianity, in the sense that historically that's where it came from. But you could say it's a reaction against Christianity rather than having been.
There you go, Dawkins.
With Christianity.
But even as a reaction against Christianity, the advances that we have made are rooted in that story. And my objection to throwing the baby out with the bathwater is that if you create this disconnect so that young people they haven't been told of those debates, they're reading works that tell them that everything that the white male Christian left behind is exploitative, it's destructive, it has to be replaced with something else. It's settler, colonial, whatever. It's being cut off from the roots of that civilization. And I think part of the reason why that vacuum came about and it was possible was because of this casting aside of Christianity and this attitude within atheism that if you say reason, everybody will suddenly start becoming, reasonable and think reasonably. And in that sense, that's been a mistake. G.K. Chesterton.
Wait, that's like saying if you say faith and morality, everyone's going to become moral and spiritual and amazing.
In the same exact way that she is going to be.
Yeah. That's the exact same thing. I don't necessarily like. That's the thing. She weaves a little bit of truth in the big larger point that she's making. Like I agree that someone saying anything left by a white Christian male is false. I agree that's a bad take. But that's not what Richard Dawkins thinks. That's not what most people she would call woke think. That's just a caricature of the easy to take down, position that is easy to fight.
Yeah, I mean, I could also say like you and your channel and your work is rooted in the story of Islam. Why should you throw the baby out with the bathwater?
Yeah, I mean,
secret
like
Muslim becomes a revealed Muslim.
That's like saying that I should give credit to Islam because I was able to help so many people, in their journey out of Islam. So Islam takes credit. That's enlightenment from Islam came because of Islam. No, that doesn't make any sense.
Was right.
Do Do you regret having been part of the New Atheism movement, having preached atheism from that pulpit?
I do regret doing that, and I want to
Whoa.
say that
I'm not surprised.
when I realized the damage that I was doing, and I was doing a great deal of damage by equating Islam with Christianity. First of all, it is false. We were talking about truth and falsehood, and not all religions are the same. Religions are different because they come out of different cultures and grow
Is
out
she
of
saying some
different
religions can be more
contexts.
true than
So
others?
Christianity is not the same
Well,
as
let's
Islam,
see,
and I'm guilty of having said, well, all faiths, all perceptions of God are the same and they're equally damaging.
That's
so
a
I come
bad
back
take,
from
though.
that, and I also have come
That is
to
a bad take.
regret the damage that I've done, and I want to make my friends like Richard and Sam Harris and Daniel Dennett and all the others. I want you to see what I see, and
We're
what I
trying.
see is where you have a moral vacuum. Something is going to fill it. I want you to see that the teachings of Christianity, just like you said, if there is a competition between Team Christian and Team
But there
Islam, it
isn't.
would be on Team Christian. That what you value in Christianity is something that really is absolutely necessary to pass on to the next generation. And we have failed the next generation by taking away from them that moral framework and telling them it's
Can we pause
nonsense
for a
and
second?
false. But
Because she gets to say a lot of things, and then we kind of forget to answer some of what she said.
She's a bit rambly, yeah.
I already kind of forgot a little bit of what she was saying. Yeah, she always again brings it back to Islam versus Christianity. Without Christianity, how
Like a
can we have
politician.
morality?
Yeah, that's her
Yeah,
talking
without
point.
God, can we have more? How can we have morality? And which one is worse, the big bad crazy Islam or the docile little Christianity? She said something so outrageous, but I already forgot it because she kept talking.
Okay, let me go back.
also something that is of Christianity, the damage that all perceptions of
Oh
different
yeah,
cultures
about the.
and grow out of different
Wait,
contexts.
pause that for a
So
second.
Christianity is not the same as
Yeah, her bad take. She was saying that I used to equate Christianity and Islam and say that all religions are equally damaging. That is a bad take, to say that all religions are equally identically damaging. I'm surprised that she ever said that.
I would never say that as an atheist.
Yeah, I mean, people have condemned me for saying that Christianity can also be harmful. I didn't say equally. I didn't say exactly in the same ways. They can be uniquely harmful and on different scales. So she had a bad opinion before, and now
as an
she's
atheist.
as an
Again,
atheist. And
is it
no.
possibly rooted in her traumatic experiences as a Muslim woman and feeling rage against what she saw as as religion being at fault? I'm not sure.
I think if someone has a simplistic opinion on one side, they move to another side and they still have a simplistic opinion. And her simplistic opinion now is that I don't know if I'd call it simplistic necessarily, but yeah, that Christianity is the answer. That is the simple opinion that she has, is that Islam bad, world needs morals, Christianity is the source of morals. But she doesn't sound like she had a good opinion to begin with. And I suspect that's partly why I never really listened to her, because she was an angry voice, and I didn't I didn't want to take away from her voice. Like she has the right to express herself however she wants to, but I didn't get value from it because I quickly understood, yeah, Islam is not true and Islam can be harmful. I didn't need any more information, but she just kept on going that Islam is bad and all religions are equally bad. That's a bad opinion to have to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I would only go as far to say as for the organized religions that I'm aware about and know rather well, I would say they're equal in the sense that they don't have good evidence for their truth, but that's probably where I would stop and draw
Or
the line.
all religions are equally true, which is not proven. Like she said something about, we're talking about truth and falsehood, and then didn't quite address it. And I think what was implied here is that she's saying not all religions are equally untrue. She didn't say that explicitly.
It's unclear. Yeah, maybe she finishes off by explaining that.
Islam, and I'm guilty of having said, well, all faiths, all perceptions of God are the same and they're equally damaging. So I come back from that, and I also have come to regret the damage that I've done, and I want to make my friends like Richard and Sam Harris and Daniel Dennett and all the others. I want you to see what I see, and what I see is where you have a moral vacuum. Something is going to fill it. I want you to see that the teachings of Christianity, just like you said, if there is a competition between Team Christian and Team Islam, you would be on Team Christian. That what you value in Christianity is something that really is absolutely necessary to pass on to the next generation. And we have failed the next generation by taking away from them that moral framework and telling them it's nonsense and false, but also not protecting them then from the external forces that come in for their hearts, their minds, and their souls.
I think you're wrong to say. I think that you're wrong to differentiate Christianity from Islam in that sense. I mean, these Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they have the same holy book. They believe in hell. They believe in a dictatorial God. They believe in so much that's similar. The problem with Islam is that it's 700 years out of date, and Christianity has moved on, thank goodness, and mainly because most Christians don't actually believe it anymore. I mean, they don't take it seriously. Problem with Islam is that they take it seriously. They believe in their religion.
I'm not sure if that's true, that Christianity has moved on. Maybe more so, relatively speaking, than a lot of Muslims. But as Michael in the live chat points out, reversal of Roe v. Wade, abortion bans, travel bans for healthcare, book bans, word bans, at least 417 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced in state legislatures across the United States. Moved on, indeed.
And also, I think him saying they all have the same book, that's not true. I mean, Muslims make the claim that their religion is a continuation and it believes in all those books, but it essentially, effectively, not really. It adopts a lot of these beliefs, but it mutates them. So you can't, that is incorrect to say that they're all basically the same thing.
Also, I don't think the Jewish religion has a hell concept. I could be wrong about that, but I think they differentiate themselves from Christianity and Islam that way.
Yeah, I think he's doing his point a disservice by lumping in the three religions and saying, well, they're all Abrahamic, therefore they're all bad in the same way.
But I think he was making the really important point that I was sort of making earlier, but you're kind of discounting the shared problems that Islam and Christianity do have, even if he's like kind of wrong about the details.
Yeah.
They actually will fight to the death for their religion in the way that Crusaders used to. And thank goodness they no longer do. Christianity has grown out of that.
But how do you respond to Ayan's charge there? It feels like quite a grave charge that atheism movement, that dismantling, has left a whole generation inadequately equipped to deal with the forces that are coming at them. And that's what she's saying.
We have secular humanism, we have rationality, we have moral philosophy. Moral philosophy is how we decide which bits of Christianity we like and which bits we don't. Which bits of the Bible we take as being moral and which ones we don't. We cherry pick. And the basis for our cherry picking is modern, secular, moral philosophy, which is a well-established philosophical discipline.
Which is credited to Christianity.
It's on that
Remember
basis
that.
And I somewhat disagree with him.
What is moral and what is not.
Because it's not a book. It's not a specific movement that is as well defined as Christianity is, even though Christianity varies a lot, even among preachers of the same denomination. But it's less of a flag to rally behind. So it's not as easy to say that we've taken away their religion and replaced it with this book or with this flag. She gets to say, well, I have a flag for them to rally behind. That's where she sounds like she has more of a point. But she's, again, that's working on the presumption that we want people to rally behind Christianity and that they're better off with Christianity than with something rather than nothing, as she puts it. Because as we've said before, people can and do have bad opinions and rally behind bad movements, even with Christianity, even within believing in Christianity.
How we decide in favor of feminism, of all the things that we value today, which do not come from Christianity. They come in spite of Christianity, in spite of all religions.
Exactly.
So what is your diagnosis for why that has come about? Why so many people do seem to be so lost during this secular age? If it's not
when have people not
the fault
been
of
lost?
receding religion, what?
Yeah, like okay, maybe this is a good point because I wanted to ask you this. This is a kind of a big question. Like how much do you believe the argument that we're kind of at the precipice of this big, cataclysmic cultural war, societal war, economic war? You want to say East versus West or anything?
I think that because of globalism and the internet, we're coming to to more avenues and more opportunities for people to clash in opinion, in positions, in laws, more than in the past. But I don't know if I believe, or I don't know actually if it is true, the narrative that now there are more lost people than there used to be, or that now there's more dangers looming over the people without a faith than there used to be. This is just a perceived danger that we are living through. We don't know the numbers specifically, or we don't have a comprehensive idea of, did people feel this way 300 years ago? I mean, I bet they felt like, some movement was on the rise and it was an existential threat to them.
You can probably talk to any generation, like the Cold War generation, the World War II generation, the World War I generation, so on and so forth. Like whenever there was like a plague or something, or a revolution. Again, this kind of ties to what I was saying earlier, that I feel like the impact, both negative or positive, of the new atheist movement has been blown out of proportion, because atheism or secularism is a thing that's been around for like a long time, and it didn't just emerge in the last 20 years, and it's not going away anytime soon. It's just, as you said, there's a lot more points of conflict today because of globalism.
Yeah, we should have just take it as a given, the claim that now people are suffering more than ever before, because then she gets to build on that argument without having actually proved it to begin with. But I do agree with a larger point that I don't know if she mentioned explicitly, or maybe it doesn't play into her argument here, but loss of community, I suppose, and especially when people are from different cultures are mixing in, through immigration and so on. It doesn't always happen that they then form a cohesive community together, similar to the communities where they came from. So yes, there is a loss of community when it comes with a loss of religion, or a loss of the local culture that you used to ascribe to before you moved, for example. And
That's
that
very
can cause a
true.
lot of problems.
It's true, but again, like, this is where we kind of have to look at it from like a wider lens, like a bit wider perspective, because religion is still a big force in society, and the way a lot of people organize their communities, and it's going to take many generations to transition out of that. And so what we're seeing right now is this tension of separating away from religion, and that movement is growing bigger and bigger. It's going to take a long time before we have a good community-based life that doesn't revolve around religion. It's not going to happen overnight. But to say that, we can only do it through religion, is only going to delay that process, when I think we just need
I
to
would
give it
be,
time.
I agree, and I think I would be a lot more on her side if she then started a new religion. Like if she was talking about some, or again, some less popular, less harmful religion. If she was trying to champion a new movement where people can rally behind it and get community and fight all these bad moral deficiencies, I suppose, then I'm all for that. I actually think that there could be a use for that kind of new religion. But that's not what she's doing. She's trying to go back to an old religion that's already had problems, and trying to pretend that it didn't have that many problems, and actually everything good is because of it. Everything bad happened in spite of it.
Or that, it's better than this other thing.
And it's better than this other religion as well. Yeah, which
Yeah.
is not a question for me. It's always frustrated me how Muslims would often compare Islam with Christianity when trying to make a point, and she's doing the same exact thing, just the other way around.
Yes, well said.
Why has it
Well, I'm
happened?
not quite sure what we're talking about when we say this moral vacuum. I mean, it's we're talking about wokeism, are we? Or
But first, I really do want to object, Freddie, to Richard, the statement you made about the holy books of Christianity and Islam being the same is absolutely
See,
untrue. And
that's what I'm
in fact, maybe a
saying.
follow-up to this discussion
Low
would be
hanging
to
fruit.
actually
Yep.
read
She's right.
these books to see what's in them and how different they are. And
And now
another
she gets some applause
mega
because he made a
difference
bad
is
point.
the characters of Jesus and the characters of Muhammad
Of
are absolutely
course.
radically
I
different.
totally agree with that.
Yeah,
yes.
but that is why the holy books are not the same. The
Yeah.
story is absolutely not the same. They are different. And yes, each one of them makes a claim to being an Abrahamic religion. And there I do have to do a little bit of reading up on Abraham. I have to do a little bit of reading on the Old Testament. But as far as I can tell now, from where I am in the New Testament, it couldn't be more different from the
Yes.
Quran.
Well, okay. I've done a lot of reading of it. The
Yeah.
Old Testament is a very, very nasty book indeed. And the New Testament, on the face of it, is better. But the aspect of it which I mentioned before, the idea of God couldn't think of a better way to forgive the sins of humanity than to have his son crucified. That is a disgusting idea.
God gave us free will.
What?
God gave us free will. But again, I don't want us to go back to where we have agreed.
How is that an answer to the thing he mentioned?
God impregnated a virgin and then killed her son just to atone for their sins and all that kind of stuff. How does
so
that
we
have-
can so we can choose then with our own free will whether to follow the way of Jesus or not.
I mean, that's a whole different side of the argument. She can argue that evil is because of free will and like that's where sin comes from, but God could have done it in a different way. That's the part that he's objecting to, I think. So I don't see how they correlate.
I really don't. I still don't understand why that whole idea is so necessary to Christianity. I have thought about doing a video just talking about that with someone who's knowledgeable about Christianity. So maybe a future video about that. But let's move on for now.
To disagree. But in terms of, you asked, what do you mean by a moral vacuum? And what can we fill that moral vacuum with? The conception or the perception of the difference between right and wrong is, I think, something human beings have been trying to answer for millennia. And we have different human beings and different categories of human beings have reached different answers. And I think that if you take the history and the story of the moral story of this civilization, if you say, well, it's useless, let's mock it, let's cast it aside, what emerges is a generation of young people growing up who haven't been provided with their Christian or their Judeo-Christian moral framework, and they also for some reason haven't been given what you are saying you're offering now, which is a moral humanism, or I haven't seen any kind of organized in the way religions are organized,
See, that's what I said.
reason, and people dedicated to.
But remember what I
delivering
said,
a
like we
message
need
of
to give it
morality to
time.
young people.
We're still
Well,
a very
we have-
religious world.
Richard, just to,
Well, in that case, if that were true, then we need to work harder. But
Exactly.
What we don't need is to saddle our morality with a lot of supernatural nonsense.
Well, what I think the assumption was that universities and schools would provide that, and that universities and schools, again, separated from their Christian underpinnings, started to say, we are neutral grounds, and we are going to adopt a moral neutrality towards religion and faith. And there, exactly, that's where the vacuum emerged. Young people looking for moral direction, not getting it from their own civilization, and other forces coming in and filling that out. And that is the crisis that you are witnessing now. And I think it is I'm not evangelizing, I'm not imposing a new or an old form of morality, but I'm saying that we are having a very, very serious moral crisis. And it is, I hope that this is just the first conversation, but so for those of us, I am coming out and saying, when I was advancing atheism and saying that Christianity is nonsense and it is just as nonsensical and as dangerous as Islam, I was absolutely wrong, and I contributed to this moral vacuum. And I stepped back.
Christianity. I mean,
Wait, can you pause for a
Christian
second?
church at the moment.
There's a point here that she tried the atheistic way, the secular way, so to speak. I mean, I'm misquoting here, and it didn't work in her lifetime. In I don't know the few decades that she tried it, so now she's reverting to the thousands-year-old way that has not worked. So maybe try to improve the way that people are currently doing that is not Christianity. I mean, maybe refine
As
it,
Dawkins
maybe-
said, work harder, try different
Exactly.
things. And also I think we can't discount that important element of, persistence, perseverance, and patience. We're talking about institutions that have been around for centuries and centuries and centuries. We're not going to eliminate them or their harms overnight. And it's just mind-boggling to let's just turn back to the thing that we know has caused so many of the problems that the other religion that we're criticizing is also guilty of.
But that's not it's not easy, right? For her to actually start that movement or contribute to that movement and see the fruits of it only generations down the line. That's not as easy as clinging onto a movement that already exists and claiming, giving it credit for even for victories that haven't happened yet. Like people are cheering for this hypothetical victory against Islam and hypothetical victory against moral degradation. Like the victory hasn't even happened yet, and she feels like a winner.
Yeah, what if you want results right away so you can feel better about yourself? Wait, that's not
but
what
they're not
Hirsi
even
Ali is
results.
about
They're
at all.
promises of results. Like
Mhm.
if she were to come and say the same thing about how secularist humanist values will prevail and blah blah blah, I mean, that's all well and good, but we still need time to see the results. But she's saying for certain we need Christianity to fix this, and Christianity hasn't fixed this for a long time. It has
Yes.
not fixed
So
the
what's
problem
going
of
to be
morality.
different now? I guess from her viewpoint, it's that we're neglecting it and we need to bring it back. So that's the problem.
But people
We
have then people have always been neglecting it, or she thinks that people weren't neglecting it, and that's what caused the Enlightenment. When it was the Enlightenment that came despite of Christianity,
I don't
not
know. I
because
don't
of
know.
people's adherence to it.
It makes
Yeah,
me think of, and I'm not saying this because she does seem to lean more conservative in her politics. It makes me think of the Trump supporters who say, you know, "Make America Great Again," and then you try to ask them, when was this great period exactly? And
exactly. Yeah.
it's more of a vibe, you know, like a yesteryear vibe. You know,
It's a nostalgia for a better time. That it's kind of like the Islamic Golden Age. You know, that's the same way that people pitch Islam, is to say that, remember during the Islamic Golden Age when Islam was so great, and because of that there was a lot of progress.
Exactly. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go back to the 50s when we had the impending threat of nuclear war destroying the planet and racism and gender inequality. Ah, the good times.
But I do want to agree with her a little bit here on something she said, the neutrality, the moral neutrality of, she specifically said universities, but I
Yeah.
think it's a larger outlook in general, or a larger vibe. This moral neutrality about, you know, all religions are kind of okay and people are entitled to their own beliefs and we should respect other cultures. I think that has caused a lot of trouble. I'm not saying that you should be xenophobic and irrationally afraid of every single thing that is new, but also giving a wide berth to every idea just because it is foreign is not a good way to go about it.
Agreed. My only thing is Christianity is not the answer to that.
Yeah, it certainly isn't. No.
Is the Roman Catholic Church. And they are the people who've got the organization going. They've got the whole of South America. They've got an enormous number of people. And they stand for total opposition to abortion, contraception. This is not a good organization for morality.
I think the challenge to you is, if you say the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church or any of the other Christian churches are, either in terms of your words, either nonsensical or immoral or useless, or regardless of however you characterize them, if you don't have an alternative, and I think from at least the last 5 or so decades, we see that no alternative has been established. Again, the assumption was
We're starting to get
reason and
really
enlightenment
repetitive
and humanism
here.
is simply going to emerge from education. The higher your level of education, the more reasonable you are. Now, what we see on display in our universities is the very opposite. That is a moral crisis.
Do you accept that?
Well, you seem to be saying that the
very
organization
opposite?
isn't there. I mean, we need a church of
I don't know if
humanism
I
or
agree
something
with
like that. I've never been in favor of that kind of thing, but
Do you accept the observation that Ayan is making? Do you think that's true, that having expected enlightened humanism to take the space if religion receded, that didn't happen?
I was never that optimistic. I mean, I never thought we were going to have a sort of brave new world of enlightened
in one
humanism.
generation.
I was just interested in the truth.
Even in 1 century, it's unrealistic.
The idea that somehow we were on a mission to found a new church or something like that we just never were.
So you didn't think about what would happen afterwards?
No, I mean, I can't speak for my colleagues, but as far as I was concerned, what I was interested in is what is true, and I believe that all religions are false, and I'm interested in what is scientifically true.
We have a short amount of time left, and before we conclude, I feel we should touch on this question of Islam.
Because we haven't already.
Because it actually seems, I think most people watching will be surprised by some of the language and the
Wait, can we
intensity
pause
of
for a
your
second?
agreement on this issue.
Before we talk about Islam, I want to say that here's something I disagree with Richard Dawkins on. My position is not that because all religions are false, that's why I am against them, or that's why I talk about religions. It's specifically because of the harm that can befall them. Like, there are a lot of myths that are not true that I don't go against, or myths of nationalism, for example, if they can be harmful, then I'm against them. If they're just a way for people to have hope and have love for their community, that's all well and good. So I'm not against religions because they are false as much as I'm against them because of the harm that they can cause.
I'm kind of in the
yeah.
middle between the two of you, because I think the harm that can come from religion is because they can't be demonstrated to be true, but then claim that they are and try to guide our lives. But I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Describe it as a nasty religion. That's strong terms. What do you mean by that?
I don't mean that individuals are nasty. I mean that the ideas of things like the penalty for apostasy is death. I mean, what kind of a religion is it that has to penalize people who leave it by killing them?
Yeah.
That is a revolting idea. And
Secret Muslim Aladdin, would you agree with that?
I mean, on one hand, I am happy that they're bringing attention to such an issue on a large platform. On the other hand, I don't like the venue and the situation where it's being brought up, because it's being used to prop
perhaps
up Christianity.
ulterior motive, maybe.
Or
it's not even ulterior.
Not necessarily malicious, but her whole point is that I am a Christian because of Islam, because Islam sucks. Like, that's most of her point here, is that Islam sucks and we need to go against it. So I'm happy that they're talking about this particular thing, for example, the penalty for apostasy. And I've said this a lot before. It's not just that how many people are killed because of leaving Islam. It's the attitude that people have towards people leaving Islam. So I'm glad that, attention is being brought to that. But if the whole point of bringing attention to that is just to make Christianity look better and make her seem more reasonable in her position of being a Christian, then I don't necessarily like the way that it's being brought up.
Well, let's see what else they say about it.
Are you like Ayan? Are you anxious by the protests? Do you watch what's happening in the news with anxiety? In that respect, she seemed to be saying earlier that Islamist ideas are.
He's not even following what protests
are growing.
I wasn't aware of
the
that.
protests.
The protests that are going on in American university at the moment look to me more like anti-Jewish, anti-Semitism.
And the vector for this
is he saying that he's not aware, or that
it seems like he's saying he's not. I think he's agreeing with Ayan Hirsi Ali's perspective, but he's also saying that he's not he hasn't done all his homework on them, I guess.
He was saying, I'm not aware that the protests that are happening right now are anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic. Or is he saying, he's not aware, but I agree?
Yeah, he's saying that they seem to be, yeah.
Is Islam, it's radical Islam. On every university, there is a Muslim student association. There are Islamic centers, there are mosques, there are websites, and they propagate, and sometimes in the most sinister ways, the faith and the antipathies and the antipathy that radical Islamists hold against Jews have had, they're running amok in our universities and our schools. So if from one day to the next we wake up, the 7th of October last year, that horrible event happened where 1,200 Israelis were killed, many of them young people, many of them actually on the left, in kibbutzim, and many, many women raped and people mutilated. And you would think that in making that moral reckoning, that students here or anywhere, even fellow Muslims have said, this is absolutely heinous and it has to be condemned all the way. That is not what we are seeing. What we are seeing is the investment that radical Muslims made here on our soil, those young people completely brainwashed into coming out and blaming the victim, draping themselves in kafirs, shouting,
can we pause for a second?
Slaughter.
So, yeah, 1,200 people died. There weren't protests on October 9th in September. There weren't protests then about the Israeli reaction. People were kind of just waiting anxiously about what Israel was going to do. And now, after how many tens of thousands of people dead, now people are protesting. So it's not that people are protesting Israel for retaliating immediately right after. It's that we're nearing October of 2024, and it's still ongoing. And that's not entirely just because Israel is the contributor here, but people are protesting that people are still dying. So she makes it seem as if people were protesting in October that Israel was retaliating, or people were supporting Hamas or something. That's not what's happening right here.
No. And I have to put a couple caveats before I say this, but so I'm opposed to Hamas. I don't like what Hamas does. I oppose using violence on civilians, but it also kind of presents this view that what Hamas did kind of happened in this vacuum, that it was almost unprovoked or only provoked by anti-Semitism, and that's simply not true. This is a decades-long conflict, decades-long occupation. And I'm, again, not justifying what Hamas did, but we need to understand that context to understand where people are protesting from, like what their motivations for protesting, instead of doing what Dawkins, I would say, very disappointingly did and just kind of dismiss it. Oh, it appears to me to be anti-Semitic.
Yeah, and the way that she's using anti-Semitism here, it's as if every time if there was like an organization of African Americans who are harming other people, and every time anyone criticized them, you say, well, you can't be racist. Or you're doing this because you're racist, even though there might be racist people protesting that group. It's not just because you're opposing them, you are a racist. So I don't think that anyone and everyone opposing Israel's actions or protesting the US pouring money into this war is doing it because they're anti-Semitic.
Yeah, and some people have said that there were protests soon after October 7. What I would say is the extent of the global protests we're seeing cropping up in places like Japan, throughout Europe, is something that happened after the accumulation of the violent actions by Israel in the past, I guess, 8 months now.
Yeah.
Slogans and chants on our campuses and thinking that they are replicating 1968 and see themselves as anti-war patrons. There is something that is going on. There is the mind virus of wokeism. There is the mind virus of radical Islam. And atheism is not the answer. I cannot go with all conscience to these young people and say there is nothing to believe in, because the more we say there is nothing to believe in, there is nothing. Then
Again, like, this is such a frustrating. I hope Dawkins calls her out for this. That if you're an atheist, then you believe in nothing. Is that what she was like when she was an atheist? She just believed in nothing, proceeded with no values, no anything. Is that what she thinks of Dawkins? But I guess she thinks Dawkins is actually a
or
Christian.
he's the exception. He's like, yeah, he's
Oh,
almost
he's basically a
Christian-like.
Christian. Yeah.
It's what people do in every in-group and out-group. There are Muslims who do this and say, you're basically behaving like a Muslim. I like you because you have Islam in you still, or something. And Christians do the same thing. It's frustrating to see her misrepresent the whole nothing and something. Okay, you can't just keep relying on something. You're relying on a very specific definition of something. You can't just hide behind something is not nothing, and also misrepresent everything that Dawkins says and everything that any atheist says to nothing. And also, what does that practically look like? So the people who are right now being misled, as she says it, when you just go to them and be like, have you heard of Jesus Christ? Is that really going to fix the problem? Like, I don't understand how Christianity is going to swoop in and correct them.
Well, give it another 2,000 years and see how they do.
Yeah.
One else comes and fills that nothing with something, and I don't like what I'm seeing.
Are you anxious? I mean, some of the language you've used this evening, I'm not sure if you said clash of civilizations, but it was moving in that direction, will be anxious-making to people. I mean, you are now a Christian. Are you really hoping to go back to the days where Christians take up intellectual arms against Muslims and we have a kind of civilizational conflict? It will be very anxious-making to people to hear that, perhaps.
I'm not going there. I'm going to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And you look at some of those frat students, and please just take a look at how they responded. Where there is an existing faith that is strong, it is very difficult for all of these other mind viruses to encroach upon and take over. That is as far as I'm going. I'm not saying let's start the Crusades again. I'm just saying let's stand for what we have. Let's embrace it and let's defend it. And to defend it, you have to have a counter message. There is a great deal of activism knocking on young people's doors, telling them, do you want to know the difference between right and wrong? Do you want to know the difference between truth and false? And I don't see any counter activism coming from humanists or coming from atheists. I see you and my fellow friends just as bewildered as anyone else when you look at this. So the people who are in charge of universities, people who are in charge of educating and developing young minds are looking on and thinking, what the heck is going on here? And that is not the right attitude. And it never has been the right attitude. There's a great deal of denial. Yes, there's a clash of civilization. And this clash of civilizations has been going on at least since 1989. And the attitude of Western leaders, political leaders, academic leaders, media leaders, has been to hide in denial. It's been to deny it. And the more you deny it, the more those adversaries who are clashing with us benefit from it. And right now, I don't think atheist humanism is offering any answers. I challenge you to come up with an elaborate message to fight these people.
What is your message to your
This sounds
Muslim?
to me, this kind of sounds to me like I challenge you to write a Quran, and if you don't have a thing that fits the format that I want, then
A
therefore you
thing
lose
that
the
is
challenge.
better than the Bible.
Yeah, or like, so what is she offering here? She's not actually doing anything personally. She's challenging Dawkins to, come up with a comprehensive list or some kind of book or something. That's a lot of work for him to do. On the other hand, she doesn't need to do anything. She gets to say, "Look at the Bible." That's that I didn't even read, from her perspective. But I believe that this religion has that vague, comprehensive list. But what is it in actuality? Like, can she give us a multiple step plan? How are you planning on fixing this with Christianity
Well, it's about love. It's
and morals,
comforting. It's better
enlightenment?
than Islam.
Hmm.
It's been around for a while. Case closed.
But what's the action plan here? Like, this is all again relying on a hypothetical where Christianity is better than nothing, or Christianity is better than the moral vacuum. Okay, so what do you think is going to happen, or what does it look like to introduce Christianity to fill up that vacuum?
Well, if they have the Christian mind virus, then they won't be infected by the woke mind virus.
Right. And yeah, and calling
Seems
it a
reasonable to
mind
me.
virus, that's one thing. Thank you for reminding me of that. Calling it a mind virus, you know that anyone who is quote unquote inflicted with the mind virus is not going to take kindly to that wording, and is not going to be, their minds are not going to be changed. This is language that is coded for people who already think of it as a mind virus to say she has a point, but it's not going to fix anyone, including the people who you think have a moral vacuum. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. This is not an actionable plan. It's not like people inflicted with the wokeism or Islamism mind virus are going to hear her saying mind virus and think, I'm going to adopt Christianity instead. She's talking to the people who think it's a mind virus and talk about it that way, and they're just
Speaking to
happy to
people
point it out.
within her bubble and not the ones that are.
Exactly.
Well, this ties into what I was saying earlier, that let's say you want to reach out to young Muslims who live in the West. You're not going to get to them by appealing to them with another religion that is built on the rationality of blind faith. It's just not going to
And
happen.
and which they have very strong points from their perspective. Muslims are very heavily fortified against Christianity. So there's no way that Christianity is going to replace Islam with those people. But even if you mean non-Muslims, you're saying that they have a mind virus. Again, this speaks to the importance of the language, that you use. I don't think this language is designed to change people's minds. It's designed to rally the people that already agree with her and to get support from people who might not even necessarily share the same worldview on Christianity or God, but agree with her on wokeism and Islamism being a problem and so on.
Yeah. And Jesse makes a great point for pro-Christianity. Christmas is fun.
Yeah.
Can't forget about that.
Or formerly Muslim followers. I mean, you have many, many people who see you as a beacon of someone who has left their Islamic faith behind and has found success and flourished in a secular Western society. What do you say to them now that...
So again, there are a billion and some Muslims, and there are Muslims who are peace-loving, who hate the Islamists, who hate the message of hatred and blowing people up and closing the minds and threatening people that if you leave Islam, you're going to be killed, which is absolutely revolting. So right now, I have more genuine Muslim friends than I ever had before, because the same individuals who reject, they still identify as Muslim, but they reject the idea of forcing faith on other people. And so a lot of them, my Muslim friends, are scratching their heads and wondering why Western civilization is committing suicide, why they're allowing this, in the name of freedoms, in the name of freedom of speech, freedom of association, and freedom of religion. We have allowed a cult of power, Islamism, a political totalitarian ideology, to seed itself here, deepen and broaden and grow, and we have nothing in return to say. And it's a cult that wants to destroy the very freedoms that it uses to advance its agenda.
So what is your invitation?
So again, a blend of truth with the other stuff. So you said it very well earlier. I mean, the problem is when we just we fear criticizing something just because it's foreign or because it's a minority, and we worry about offending, and then things can creep in when there are things that we have to challenge and negotiate as a society. For example, the role of women in society, how to educate our children, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and it's funny to me that she keeps using the word cult when she's also talking about replacing a cult with another cult, just a more metal
better
down cult,
cult.
a better cult, a better mind virus. I mean, to
Yeah,
borrow from her language.
you can only fight fire with fire.
And that's not to say that, to use her language, that all Christians are infected with a mind virus. And I don't think she was saying that all Muslims are infected with a mind virus. But if you can say that, there are good Muslims and I have good Muslim friends and so on, and they're not infected with a mind virus. But you can also say I have good Christian friends, but some of them are infected with a mind virus, the ones in the cult and so on. You can use the same language and the same analogies with both religions.
Yeah.
To your Muslim or formerly Muslim followers? Is it become a Christian?
I'm not telling people to become Christian. All I have done is explain why I have become a Christian. I'm not saying to fail. I did say at one point in 2010.
Is that a sincere thing she's saying there?
I don't quite.
If she's not evangelizing, what is all this talk about the need to fight Islamism and wokeism in this clash of civilizations about?
It's the whole, it's just my opinion, guys. It's just how I view it. It's the realm of perception that I am perceiving right now, but I'm not calling for any messages. But then she would go and have talks with people who are promoting Christianity straight up. Like she's not stupid. She knows that she's being used as a symbol, or she's placing herself as a symbol for evangelizing. So
She
she
does
can't
have
just
a
say,
book coming up.
and that. So she can't just say, I'm not I'm not a part of a church, I'm not an evangelist, but I will be used by every evangelist, and I'm sending a message for evangelists to utilize. And I'm essentially evangelizing by saying this is necessary, but I'm not saying you should join, but I'm saying it's necessary.
Leave, if you're a good person, leave Islam and told the Catholic Church, why don't you win hearts and minds that way? That is not what I'm saying today. But I am saying to those fellows, I'm in a club with the Clarity Conference. It's Muslim reformers, ex-Muslims, people with a background like mine. And what we do is, if nothing else, just make you aware, if the world is ruled according to Sharia, if the people who are advancing this cult get what they want, we are going to see women caged up. We are going to see beheadings. We are going to see civilization go down the drain. They've demonstrated it over and over again. Al-Qaeda has done it. ISIS has done it. Hamas is doing it today.
Wait, what?
I think that we need to come out of the...
I'm confused. Is she saying she's confusing multiple things? You have the moral vacuum that is being filled by people unwittingly, being anti-Semitic without realizing it, all that kind of stuff. But also Islamic terrorism is going to come and take over the West. Is that what she's saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Like people in cages, is that what she's saying is going to happen in the West? That's a very different narrative than, religion is getting into people's heads, or Islam is infecting people's heads.
Well, this is the clash of civilizations that she's talking about. And I mean, again, I can see where she's coming from, because we can't discount what kinds of realities Muslims who really want to adhere to what the religion teaches. I mean, women in cages specifically, no, but the idea of really constraining what women can or can't do in society. Who knows if Muslims become more of a majority and start becoming elected politicians, what will happen? She's saying if Sharia law is imposed as the law of the land. And I guess for some people, and I think this is where we're starting to get to a bit of a histrionic fear, is that France will have Sharia law imposed and will become a Muslim country, for example.
And that's a very far that's very far from what she was saying earlier, which is talk about the moral vacuum and all that kind of stuff. Like that's two very different scales.
Well, the moral vacuum is going to lead to this, is what she's saying.
But again, I want to remind people that the people who suffer from Islamic extremism are often Muslims. And often in areas that are already ingrained with Islamism and everything. Like it's not a concern for people in the US or in the UK that someday their women might be in cages. So if she's trying to drum up support for women in the Middle East, for example, who are suffering, that's one thing. But to say beware or else that's going to be you next, that's a whole other thing. And I don't think that we're anywhere near that point, and I hope we're never near that point. And that's not me saying just be complacent up until Sharia takes over, but that is so alarmist. And also, why are we even talking about this in a conversation about why do you believe that Jesus, or do you believe that Jesus rose from the dead?
Yeah, I mean, he did ask her, the host did ask her, what would be your message to Muslims, I think. And I mean, like, to your point, who is she addressing really? Is she addressing the people of the woke virus, mind virus? Is she addressing the people participating in the protests for Palestine? Is she addressing Muslims? It doesn't seem like it to me. It
I
seems
mean,
like she's just saying,
yeah.
gotta stick
If
with
she wants to,
Christianity. And that's
yeah,
it.
if she wants to scare people of things that are actually happening, she can talk about the many Muslims who are suffering in Western countries because of Islam, rather than saying your women might be in cages too. You know, like there's a lot more realistic stuff that she can point out to that can actually lead to people being helped, rather than using fear to drum up support for a hypothetical scenario that is most likely, hopefully, never going to come.
While not offering a real tangible answer, mind you.
Christianity.
Yeah.
I mean, Christianity is how witches were drowned and burned, right? That happened under Christianity as well. It's not like Christianity prevented that.
No, it
So,
was Christians not actually following the message of Jesus of
right.
love.
Yeah.
There's always an out, don't worry.
Nile and see as plain as daylight and as plain as they keep showing us all the time. If they prevail, this is what they're going to do. Ask the citizens of Iran, ask the citizens of Saudi Arabia, ask Mali, Nigeria, under Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab. That is what when they win, they are going to subject us to the same barbaric and
Okay, so she is talking about Muslim women in those countries now.
whom they prevail over.
But she's saying this is going to happen to us unless we become
I
Christian.
want to give the final word to you,
Yes,
Richard.
I
What
guess.
has this evening's conversation made you think?
We have
Wait, can you pause for a second?
epidemiological theories here.
Because she said she wasn't saying ask those women and what can we do to help those women. She was saying ask those women
Because it's
just to
coming
use them.
here.
Yeah, to use them as a talking point. Ask those women, okay, thank you, women, for answering. Now go back to your countries. Now we have to do something about our countries. You know, like they're so easily discarded to her in making that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, maybe she kind of used it as well. It's too late for them. I really don't know, but it when you mention it that way, it almost comes off like a bit of a lack of empathy or care for them, because she's got her talking points, and that seems to be her priority.
And that's not unique to just Ayan, by the way. There are critics of Islam and ex-Muslims as well who do this while saying, like, look at this victim or that victim or blah, blah, blah. And they don't mention the victim because they care, or they don't mention that situation because it's a good case study. It's just to make the point, as a talking point. And it's sometimes kind of how like people talk about Muhammad's marriage. It's not because they care about the victim in Muhammad's marriage. It's just like, look at your religion's so terrible. There's this point. And I think she's using it that way. She's saying, ask those women how it is. Now, thank you for answering. Go back to your shithole countries. Now we could talk about how we can prevent this from happening to us. And I know this is, yeah. And I know I'm reading too far into this, but this is for a Western audience to scare them about, what could happen if Islam takes over and so on. It's getting people. I mean, she has some semblance of truth to what she's saying, but it's not going to be productive because it's so hyperbolic. Like you want to talk about what's actually happening right now, then you can find solutions. But to talk about a hypothetical future and compare it with actual victims, it's not going to help anyone. It's just furthering her point.
The cataclysmic clash of civilizations. It sounds catchy though. Like that's eye-grabbing.
Yeah.
We have a vicious mind virus. We agree about that, and we agree about your prognostications about that. The question is, do we combat it by vaccination with a mild form of the virus? Or do we say no viruses at all and go for enlightened rationality?
You're a religious anti-vaxxer, that. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking both Richard Dawkins and Ayaan Hirsi.
Well, there we have it. Okay, time for your final vote.
No,
How
vote?
or rating, I should say. How would you rate the host?
the host was pretty good, I think.
Pretty good,
But
yeah.
I'm confused about whether this is a debate or not. So,
Well,
confused.
we'll
Yeah.
get to that. We'll get to that.
So am I rating him as a host of a debate or a conversation facilitator? But he did a good job.
Conversation facilitator. I like that. Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be like a good LinkedIn job title to kind of put in there.
Yeah, he wasn't perfect, but he did okay.
Yeah, I think he's the one who interviewed Ayaan Hirsi Ali about her conversion as well a couple of months ago. How would you rate Richard Dawkins?
It's difficult to just give it a number, but I mean, to agree with the person in the live chat, T-Rex is saying the host didn't have control of the conversation. I didn't perceive the host as in charge of the conversation, and I don't know if that's the criteria.
It felt like Hirsi Ali was in control.
Yeah. The host asked some clarifying questions, but I suppose he wasn't. Again, because it wasn't well defined what exactly is the topic here. I don't think that he was able to keep anything on track because Ayaan decided what was on track, and Richard, his whole position was, but what about this? But aren't you wrong about this? And it's, again, what is there to debate about her beliefs? It's difficult to rate him that way. He made a bunch of weak points, and I think he could have done a better job.
And I think he tried to agree with her a few times as well. Like he went out of his way to agree with the point she was making. Atrex says he didn't really want to push back against her. I think I've seen him be a bit more aggressive. I think Cheese Tax in the comments, I love that username, by the way, also noticed that Dawkins was like being a little bit soft. I wouldn't say it was a fluff piece from the sense of Dawkins' performance. I would give him like a 5 or a 6, maybe, because again, it's hard to really go after someone when this is just a civil conversation and not really a targeted debate where someone is defending a claim and you're trying to refute it. So okay, Hirsi Ali.
But I think there's also a little bit of danger to, again, it's not well defined. But if you were to say this is just a silly little innocent conversation, then you seem vicious if you want to press someone on a point that is important.
You're losing either way, really.
Yeah, because there are points, like if you let them get away with bad points, that's not good, or a bad message. That's not good because people will hear it and think, all the applause meant that she had a great point. But at the same time, if it's just a conversation, why are you being so harsh on her? So it's difficult to find that balance. I don't think it was a debate whatsoever. I think if it was framed as a debate, it was a terrible debate.
Would you give it a 0?
For debate structure? Yeah, absolutely.
0, whoa.
I wouldn't call it anywhere near a debate.
What about as how did you describe it? A facilitated conversation?
Then is, I don't know how to rate it comprehensively, like to just give it a number. I think both sides could have done a little bit better, but it wasn't a bad conversation. But to call it a debate, I think that was misleading, to say the least. I was expecting something else.
Yes, same here. I didn't expect it to have this kind of loose structure as you were describing it. I think for me, having read her essay and seen an interview where she watched her interview, I think it was with Unheard as well, where she talked about her essay. I didn't learn anything new from this that she didn't already share. I think what Dawkins did is he tried to probe into exactly what she believes and tried to point out the issues with what she was doing and comparing similarities and harm between Christianity and Islam, and how instead of inoculating ourselves with a vaccine, or however you described, like a milder form of the virus, I should say, he pointed out, well, you're just believing because it's comforting. I think he did his job in the bare basics on that front. But in the end, I don't know. I don't really know what this proved because it didn't really reveal anything beyond what she has already shared. She stuck to her political point. Christianity is better than Islam. Christianity is better than the void nothingness of atheism.
And I want to remind the viewers that we're two people who don't like Islam and we criticize Islam. So this is not, a position in defense of Islam or to, play the other side. I wanted to see better, and I wanted to see compelling reasons for Christianity or something that made a bit more sense. I think that she's really mistaken about a lot of things. I don't speak about her intentions. I don't know if she has good or bad intentions, but one can have good intentions and arrive at the wrong conclusions. So I think her
Indeed, you can.
conclusions are false. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure she does think that she's actually fighting for a force and good in the world. I'm not gonna take that away from her or anything to say she's a complete grifter, like some people in the comments were saying. But in the end, she's not really offering a tangible solution unless we give Christianity another chance. Give it another 2,000 years. Maybe Jesus will actually return in that time span, and we'll all be proven wrong. So who knows? But for right now, I think I really take a lot from Richard Dawkins' message of maybe we should just work harder at it. And what I added before, just be patient and persevere and persist, because these are major societal changes we're talking about. These tensions are not going to be resolved overnight. And I don't think appealing to cataclysmic thinking, calling it a clash of civilizations, is helping. If anything, it's pushing people further apart, and saying people have a virus is the wrong way of looking at it. I don't say that Muslims have a virus that they're infected with. I see it as an ideology that a lot of them have been indoctrinated with for understandable reasons, and it takes education and empathy and understanding to reach those people, because we share a lot more than divides us. I know that I'm sounding like a politician myself, but I think that's the important thing here, because if we look at people in such adversarial terms, look at the way they're just dismissing the pro-Palestine protests. I think that's another indication of how simplistic her viewpoint of the world is, and probably was when she was an atheist as well.
Well, I have to say that there can be parallels to be drawn with a viral infection or an epidemic or cancer. I've even heard people compare Islam to cancer or something, and I can easily draw parallels and make that comparison. And maybe, maybe it's a sound comparison to make in some situations, but again, the question becomes, who are you making the comparison for? So if you're just telling other people who left their religion about it, they might agree with you, and that's all well and good, but it's not really achieving anything to change other people's minds. So it's not that I disagree with her characterizing an idea as a virus, because ideas can spread like viruses, and that's not just Islam. It's just, what's the utility, to go back to utility, like she always
Yeah,
uses it.
yeah.
The
I mean,
utility, yeah.
it's the thing of where I think it really reflects like this mentality. Well, these people are lost zombies. They're infected.
Yeah, I think the utility that comes from like referring to it as a mind virus and so on, it has more utility in riling up the people that support her than it does in actually combating and actually achieving her mission, which is fighting those ideologies, because people who ascribe to those ideologies are not going to be swayed by that phrasing.
No, well said. I just want to highlight a few super chats that came in at the very end. Because Jesus says, "Hello, Aladdin, peace be with you."
What about
And
Alim?
no, just you. I should probably e-transfer you that. And Atrex says, I rate this very negatively because they want to invoke the authority of a debate with none of the due diligence. You might be right. Ion basically just preached while Dawkins resisted in milquetoast fashion. Good use of milquetoast, Atrex. That's a word I don't see very often. Well done. I think you spelled
Fun
it right
fact,
too.
I used to think that was like French toast, like a breakfast item.
So
I agree. I agree with that. And
yeah,
them being friends could have worked better. Like there's a way to hold your friend's feet to the fire a bit better than just being like, what, this is your journey and I don't want to invalidate you. Like that's kind of what he was doing. And that's all well and good if all of her message is, I found Jesus and now I have peace. But her message is not just that. She has a lot of other things. So she doesn't just get to say, that's just my opinion. We can agree to disagree. And I just found peace. That's just my journey, guys. Like I feel like it was being treated
there's a
that
more,
way.
yeah.
Yeah.
More definitely as a defense mechanism. Now I'm just thinking back on the whole thing, because how can you really argue with someone's? It's just like my opinion, man. It's really hard. Yeah. So let me just check the status of the poll question. We've got 130 votes. Thank you for everyone for voting. You can still vote in the live chat right now. A couple people are joining in with their votes. Have the new atheists done more harm than good in the world? So 70% said no, and 30% said yes. And thank you for sharing your vote there. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Aladdin. I really appreciate you coming in as
Thanks for
always.
hosting. Yeah.
And yeah, I just want to say to everyone, if you enjoyed this, maybe we'll do more of these kinds of debate reviews. Hopefully the next one will actually be a real debate. But I thought there was like a lot that was interesting, a lot revealing about the mentality of some people who convert to Christianity. And I'm sure many who are Christians will say, well, she's not really a Christian. And you might be right. Yeah. So yeah, please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. I do also have a Patreon if you want to support the channel this way. Thank you to all my patrons for all of your support. It really does remind me of how meaningful this work is for a lot of you, and it helps motivate me to keep going. Probably the same for you, Aladdin, right?
Yeah, and that's actually a smart idea, putting it as a ticker. That's nice.
Yeah.
And I want to say, by the way, if you want to do another one of these and you find a debate, try to find one where the atheistic or non-theistic position is not very well defended or well defined. That will be more fun than us just piling on a theist making bad arguments. So I want to call out atheists or whoever is, against the theist when they make bad arguments. That's more fun.
Definitely. Yeah. So feel free to reach out to either of us if you have suggestions of specific videos we should check out. I've been thinking about doing a video that from Ali Dawa for a while now, because I've never really covered him directly on the channel. And so if anyone knows a video of his that's worth covering, do let me know. I did watch one of his videos thinking it might be good. I actually had trouble understanding what he was saying. Do you ever find that with like British TV shows where you need to adapt a bit to the accent?
Oh, you're talking about the accent? No, his accent, I mostly understood. It was mostly just the structure of his sentences that I found more difficult, but yeah.
So bike pap 4040, you can find my email on my about page on YouTube. You can also message me on Twitter, Instagram. You can find the links in the video description below. Anything you want to promote before I let you go, Aladdin?
Yeah, my channel. It's a little unheard of channel called Apostate Aladdin. So yeah, if you're not a subscriber, just go subscribe. And yeah, I hope we get to do this again. Maybe next time I'll host you over for one of these.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.